Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the August meeting of the LPEA Board of Directors. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off with a call to order. And I think we have done this in the past. We did it in the last meeting, and I'd like to continue the tradition by starting the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, which is a little unusual in a Zoom format, but I think the spirit of it's still there. So if to the extent that you can stand or are willing to, go ahead and cite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terrific. Thank you.
We throw our hats now.
We'll try to find a an American flag background for the next call. So I need a motion to approve the agenda as it currently exists.
I'll move to approve the agenda as proposed here.
Terrific. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kohler.
Again, all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All abstained? Terrific. The agenda is approved. Let's get, why don't we go ahead and get right into member comments? Do we have a staff member who's going to drive member comments here?
Yes, I can do it. It's Janelle.
Terrific. Thanks, Janelle.
You're welcome. I don't see any hands up yet. Okay. Let's go with Susie.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a visual on me or not, or if you want one. Doesn't
Entirely
matter.
up to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity to express my concerns and opinions around regaining local control of our communication systems and the process, hopefully choosing fiber optics over our mostly wireless networks. I strongly support our local LPEA leadership in deciding to make certain our entire community is made healthier by creating our own fiber optic network. Too many of us have experienced poor communications to the internet, have been overcharged, and have been left at the mercy of out-of-town companies who seem to all be more interested in profits rather than quality of service. I applaud you all for even considering taking this task on. My biggest concerns are in the health area. I notice when I'm around more EMF disturbances, I feel it. And I wonder, how does this even affect our entire environment? I have friends that are so sensitive that they have to sleep beneath EMF shields. I'm not as sensitive as they are, but I do know my entire nervous system is impacted by EMFs. Wireless communication does not feel safe, and I believe that in time it's going to be proven to be toxic for all. A few weeks ago, all the electricity was turned off in my house for a while due to some construction nearby. My house and my physical body felt noticeably more peaceful and less stressed. I appreciate our utilities, but I believe a frequency like EMFs do add an invisible stress, which makes it a challenge to address. I believe that as we add more relay stations and more high frequencies to our environment, we're creating a more stressful and unhealthy future. Why gamble on something that's not proven to be safe on multiple levels? It seems like we would be throwing money away to dig deeper into Wi-Fi. Sorry. Please carefully consider the seriousness of this decision and the impact on us all, rather than make the fast business choice make the solid fiber optic choice that will support our wildlife, our children's futures, and I believe make Durango a safer place to live. We all deserve cybersecurity, and we know we will have this with fiber optics. I'm asking you to please consider the worth of our future health and cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you tell us, just for the record, what district you're from?
3.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go with Kyle.
Morning. Kyle, can you start by saying your name and telling us what district you're in before you begin your comments?
Sure. My name's Kyle Amstetter. I'm in District 4. I have a poor internet connection, so hopefully this comment will come through to you guys. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. First is a request. When meetings go back into person, it would be great if public participation can continue via Zoom. If that's something that the board would consider, that'd be, I think we get a lot more public participation in these meetings if we're able to connect remotely. So I'll stop there. And then the other comment was just to encourage the board to support the broadband committee and their recommendations. As we have all learned over the last year, broadband access is more and more important, and enables enables us to address so many of our strategic goals, lowering carbon emissions, continuing or encouraging local economic development. And by that, I don't mean the development of the broadband, but the businesses and job opportunities that it creates for our membership. And principle number 7, concern for the community, it seems to hit on a lot of these things. So really wanted to encourage the board to support the broadband committee and their goals. That's it. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for your comments.
Not seeing any other hands.
Kristen, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure I captured Kyle. The first thing I think he said was that he was requesting that we continue to have this meeting be able to be attended remotely. Was that what he said? It was a little choppy.
He was specific, but he's still on, but to paraphrase, he was specifically requesting that at the very least comments would be allowed via Zoom.
By Zoom, okay, super. And then the second thing I wanted to bring out in light of both of these folks talking, Susie and Kyle, is we did receive a petition with over 500 signatures of folks who wanted LPEA to forward broadband, and specifically most of the comments were about doing it with fiber. So I just wanted to bring that in during those comment section.
Okay, thank you. Next.
I don't see anyone else.
Okay, give it 10-20 seconds here. Late arrivals and otherwise. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then. That is the end of the member comment period. So thank you all for your comments. We appreciate it. And we're going to go ahead and move to the consent board items. And these have all been in your board packet. So hopefully everybody has a chance to review those. And if we want to go ahead and have a motion to approve the consent board items as they are in their packet, that'd be great.
So John, I'll, since I put my hand up, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve. But in doing that, I want to point out that director travel and training requests and director expense approval are a part of consent items, and they haven't been in the past.
That's correct. Thank you for.
And so people should notice that, and more, I think more information related to expenses in terms of sign-in sheets and that kind of thing have been included as well that weren't typically. So sounds like we're putting that a little bit more on all of us to have looked at that as part of the consent package, as opposed to talk it through or have a little discussion of it.
That's correct. And we had actually sent a preview email out a few days early,
Right.
Calling this point out and making sure that people had time to visit and comment. It's just sort of a routine matter in general.
Right. I just want to point that out. So that's part of my motion to approve the consent items.
Terrific. So
Second by Kohler.
terrific. Okay, so for discussion, looks like Tim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, typically on a consent item, if there is a desire to have a little discussion, we would ask those to be removed, which is what I'm doing for director travel and training requests and expense approval. That's completely new. There was no heads up at all. It came in very late. I think we should remove that, make sure that we're all in agreement that this is a consent item as a board going forward, and then we can make that change going forward rather than the last minute yesterday change to the board packet. So I think the board president
Okay, so
perhaps remove that, and we can take it up later, and we can vote on the rest.
okay, so to my understanding it, and correct me if I have any of this wrong, Graham, as a matter of removing consent items, it does not have to be discussed to remove a board item. Simply any member can request the removal of the item, and it's unilaterally removed just on the basis of the request. Since Director Wheeler has requested that, we will automatically remove travel and training requests and expense approval from the board consent. And with this with the motion, we can discuss and vote on the remaining items, which are items A through D: approval of board minutes, accept new member lists, capital credit payments to estates, and monthly write-offs. Do I have that right as a matter of procedure, Graham?
That is correct. So when a consent agenda item can be removed by one statement of any one director, it doesn't need to be seconded. It doesn't need to be voted on. Just stating, I would like this removed from the consent agenda removes it. Sort of works as an automatic amendment of the motion. So now the motion is to approve consent items A through D, as you noted, and that does not need to be removed or reseconded.
Terrific. Okay, so so we have a first and a second for A through D. Now we'll have a period of discussion. Any questions or comments on A through D?
Yeah, John, I have my hand up. So again,
Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
so I did send a couple of minor corrections to the minutes or suggestions and a question to Janelle yesterday. So I don't know if we want those discussed or not. So before we vote, they're pretty minor. One of the guests was name was spelled wrong. I had a question on the vote that was recorded.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that, John, I reviewed both of those proposed. Yes, we did have, because I typed his name wrong, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong. Mr. Hyber. So we had Mr. Hyber's name spelled wrong in the initial draft, and we had a typo on one of the votes. We had typed it out as 5-2 vote, and it was a 9-2 vote. That was the vote for Director Lee to serve as our representative at Tri-State's annual meeting. That was a typo. So those are both typos that were corrected. They weren't anything substantial.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Okay. So the minutes have been updated. And so this would be a vote to approve the minutes and the remaining items, the other items, as corrected per Graham and Tim's discussion. Okay. So any other questions or comments on this matter? Okay. Well, all in favor, hold your hands up for an aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Hold your hand up. All abstaining, hold your hand up. Say no. Okay, the motion passes. Okay, so let's again. I'm trying to follow the Rob rules of order here, Graham. So correct me if I'm getting this wrong. We can now return to travel and training requests and director expense approval as individual items, or
correct. So now they are on the main agenda as opposed to on the consent agenda. So now they are open for motion and debate. And so I mean, I think if this is a time that people are ready to discuss them, we can do that. If we feel that they need to be relocated to a different portion of the agenda, we could probably do that as well.
So I'm open, a couple hands up here. So let's just get the input. Why don't we start with Sue?
Thanks. I actually really like this here. Again, it kind of caught me off guard when I was reviewing stuff again last night, but in my viewpoint, spending the time that we typically do on director expenses or training requests is really kind of time consuming, and in reality, unless there's some really red flag, it's going to be approved because none of us have used that area. And so I like it here. I think it makes it more concise and it's easy to see what's going on. We as directors do have to get our act together and get it to Janelle early enough to get in the board packet, and Tim to review as well. But I thought it was really good here.
Terrific, thank you. Tim, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of efficiency, it's not a bad idea to have in the consent items. However, the experience for me for the last 3 years with director expense approval is that there are often, almost every board meeting, there's a clarification by a board director as to whether that expense, whether that should be 2 half days of per diem or 1 full day, or this expense or that expense isn't reported. I think the background sort of process that we have to handle those, while improved significantly the last year or so, there are still questions. There are still directors that have difficulty to get those in on a timely manner and also a correct manner. So, it needs a process of improvement. Otherwise, we're going to put something through potentially in a consent agenda that has to be taken off to be discussed anyway. So I'm just pointing out my experience and for what it's worth. Thanks.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Bob, you had a comment?
Yes. For one, I mean, I wasn't sure this was coming this way, so I'm fine with it, but I didn't really know we were headed this direction. The concern I have is seems to me that director training requests doesn't feel like a consent item, because otherwise we have to somehow define that process of how you submit a training request as part of this package, and then usually those are voted on separately. So while expenses that have occurred as a consent item makes sense, but requests for future expenses feels like it's more of a standalone item. But it was just wasn't sure what you were thinking, John, on that. But like in this case, in this director travel request, I think we've already in the past approved Kirsten for those requests that are in there. But if someone today wanted to say, hey, I've thought about it and I want to go to the Energy Innovation Summit, how would that would that occur? That's my only, I think we have to think about that one, maybe not being a consent item, or if so, or if it is consent, then it has to be defined as a process where you submit the request in advance, and somehow someone's reviewing that, I guess. But what are your thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, let's hear from Dan, and then I'll weigh in, and I think Jessica has a couple thoughts here. Dan, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why with our 4-hour cow meeting, we get $200. It should be $125 in my opinion.
Okay.
That was 4 hours and not many minutes outside of that.
I have no idea how to answer that question.
Yeah, I missed that one on review in advance, and I agree with Dan that the standard is 4 hours is 125. And Janelle did send me this in advance, and I reviewed it, and I missed that. So I appreciate Dan bringing that up, and I think he's right.
Okay. Actually, Jessica, you had your hand up next, and then we'll hear from Joe.
Yeah, just to remind folks, 4 hours is $200. If it's under 4 hours, it's $125. So we were at 4 hours. Also, just to remind everybody, we did send an email about this change, so it shouldn't have been a surprise to folks last week. And the intent is that we'd really appreciate the board submitting their travel requests in advance. And that way we can send the board the travel requests that everybody else is doing. So if another board member is taking a class at CREA, you can look at that request and say, oh, I'd like to add that as well. So that is the intent, but we really would appreciate the board to read their emails in advance and get that in on time, because otherwise what's happening is we're getting things like Monday night, Tuesday night, even travel and training. And that's when we have to update the board packet, which is what happened, unfortunately, to Sue, where she lost her notes. That's why we have asked in the past that everything be submitted the Friday before the board meeting, please. That would really help us. In the interim, we will look for a new solution that would have to get away from our platform, and we'd have to go to a different board platform. But again, I think one area that we are trying to help is that if you could submit your travel and training requests by the Friday before the board, or even in advance of that, that would be even better. And then we want to send that out to the entire board on Friday, so everybody can look. If maybe over the weekend a board member says, "Oh, I'd like to take that training or do that travel," send that to Janelle. Then we will probably not be able to update the board packet if it's still the current situation we're in, but at least we can maybe add that to Google Docs or something. Ideally, we would have the board's request for training and travel by the Wednesday before the board meeting. Then that would allow us to send the rest of the board an email Thursday and Friday of that week, and so then Friday is still the cutoff date. That would be extremely helpful. And I don't know if that works for the board, but it's just an option.
Terrific. Thank you. Joe, you had a comment?
Yeah, just following up on what Bob said. I kind of like, I like to hear what meetings people are going to, and just as a kind of an information point in the meeting. So if there's any way we can just incorporate, say, hey, Kirsten's going to this and this and this, and Holly's going to this and this and this, that'd be helpful to hear.
Terrific. Thank you, Joe. Holly?
Great, thank you. I'll work on consolidating a list of what CREA is offering up in the next couple of months, as well as in our ECA, and I can delineate them between what is offered free for us through CREA and what is offered for a fee through NRECA if the board would like that. I'll just go ahead and do it for your information.
Terrific. Thank you for doing that. So for my opinion on this matter, I have two basic thoughts here. So number one, for expenses, in general, I'm not really interested in second guessing people's other directors' expenses and time sunk, and then includes Jessica's expenses. If the expense was incurred, it was incurred. I'm not really interested in evaluating that at any depth. And I just accept people's submit expense reports on face value, and certainly if there's no outliers here. So that was the reasoning for putting that in this section. Also knowing that we have a mechanism to pop it out if there's a real outlier for some reason. I'm like, oh, why wouldn't it? I'm not sure why you needed to rent an RV. Let's talk about it. So that's number one. And then number two, this board meeting is an extraordinarily expensive board meeting. It's tough to overstate how expensive it is on a minute by minute basis. And so in terms of absolute costs and in terms of brain drain and attention, and we've certainly seen this issue when we have had to dig into to really meaty substantive issues, and the day wears on and we get deeper into the day, people genuinely get tired. And it becomes harder and harder to evaluate complicated, nuanced issues. And so to the maximum extent that we can pre-process items via email so that the bulk of this meeting can be applied to the high value work, the better. This stuff was sent, and perhaps we should have done a little better job signaling the upcoming change, but the intention was based on that belief, and this information was transmitted a week in advance, and I would sort of echo what Jessica said, which is, as part of the run up to board meetings, to make sure that with sufficient time, you're processing all of your emails in advance so that we're reserving as much time as possible for the hard issues. And we're not spending, 12, 14, 15 people's time evaluating and discussing a $21 expense report, or evaluating whether or not, Holly wants to go to a CREA meeting. If she wants to go, shouldn't be my opinion, like she should go. Like if Bob or Kohler wants to attend a training session, they should go. Like I'm not going to second guess their opinion. And I think we can make this as ministerial as possible. That's my opinion. And so I think on a go forward basis, let's try it again next month this way. And if it still gets kicked out, just like it did this time, we'll pop it back out. And we'll go back to the old way. But I would encourage, in the name of efficiency, to try to roll this into the consent. We'll try it one more month. And if it's really not working, fine, it's not working. It's an experiment, and so be it. Fair enough? Okay. Then
John, I think
I'm sorry, I missed you. Thank
hand
you.
her hand emoji sort of hides in the corner of her picture.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll change that. So yeah, I had a comment on the content. So this is for the director training. So I am actually a month in advance. This is for October. So you guys who want to also go to this, the CREA Energy Innovation Summit is usually a really good thing. There's several breakout sessions, and on the Saturday and Sunday before, there is free training. So those are those two that I've got in there. One's a basic and then one's an advanced. So I'm definitely going up for that. I'd be happy to carpool with anybody who wants to go. But get your request in because it's going to be in October. Thank you.
What's the date, Kirsten?
I'm going to have to look at my request. Let me see.
Terrific.
It's early.
9th, 10th, and 11th.
Thanks, Sue.
Sure.
Great. And also, just as a quick reminder, the board, the board budget is in our packet. So if you want to do if you're thinking about costs and you want to take a quick gut check on the training costs, just all that information's in your board packet for background. Great. Graham, go ahead.
Thanks, John. If you don't mind me just sort of adding a little of our policy context to having this as part of the consent agenda generally, is it does conform with our policy 109, which requires that directors submit detailed expense accounts with receipts when appropriate. Then those are to be reviewed by the treasurer and approved by the board. But then if questions arise, it's supposed to be referred back to the executive committee rather than sort of hashed out in the middle of a board meeting. So perhaps that's a way to go forward with this, is to have it on the consent agenda. And if a director has a question about it, then it can be about a specific line item that can be referred out to the executive committee and not in the take up board meeting time.
Interesting. Okay, so according to that policy, we've been doing it wrong. Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a motion to approve the director of travel and training request and the director expense approval.
Terrific.
Second that.
Excellent. Seconded by Rachel. Discussion. Okay, all in favor, hands up. Aye, aye. All opposed, hands up. Any abstained? Thank you. Okay, so the motion carries. Thanks, Kohler. Appreciate you moving this party along. And I appreciate everybody's feedback and commentary here. And again, as I've said to you all in private, as we move to pick up some efficiency gains in this board meeting, if you are uncomfortable or don't like some of those changes, just communicate that. And the goal is to make sure that we're putting our effort and our energy and our time and our costs to the high value work. But there's work to be done across the board. And if it's not working for you, just tell us that it's not working for you, and we'll figure something out. So my goal is to improve, find some efficiency, not to drive through things that are making people unhappy. So, okay. With that said, we're going to move on to agenda item Roman numeral number 4, which is the CEO and staff reports. And we're going to start with Jessica.
Okay, thank you. So I will share my screen so that the public can see. Can everyone see this?
Ooh, look at all those green check marks.
Okay, so yes, that's the point that I'd like to highlight, is that we are within our goals with everything: safety, reliability, finance, beneficial electrification, and information technology. So good news on that. Any questions on that slide? Okay, I'll keep moving if there's no questions. So again, as we've been doing, I'm not going to go through all the highlights because it's in your board packet. So I'll just highlight a few. Let's see. So I was asked to be a speaker at the NRECA conference for diversity, equity, inclusion. We have a staff member, as I reported before, who started a internal group for that. So that's great. And Holly's also been very involved. So appreciate her guidance on these issues as well. Another one that I wanted to bring up is that our crews are really doing a lot of storm restoration. So we've been having a lot of outages, but it's with a lot of the rain and the wind. And again, Jerry and Garrett's crews are just doing an amazing job of getting out there quickly and getting folks back on power. We've had a number of emails and phone calls from customers thanking us. And so that's been really fantastic, is to hear all the outpouring of appreciation. The only other last thing I wanted to highlight on this is that we have a record-setting solar. So net metering applications received year-to-year date are 54% higher. So that is definitely creeping up in numbers. And that's all I wanted to highlight. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, let's go ahead and Kohler, I believe you had your hand up first, and then we'll hear Rachel and then Sue.
So I wanted to discuss the Next Generation Co-op Alliance, which is mentioned in this section. And I can tell you that for the last almost 2 years, when I've talked to our members, I have talked to them about power supply, and I refer back to our resolution 2019-10, the 3 prongs. But then almost 2 weeks ago, I got completely blindsided by this next generation thing that was up and going. The website is online. I imagine the social media stuff is working as well. And it really, really bothers me. A couple words that we used at our retreat, and I hear over and over again, is trust, integrity, and transparency. There was no transparency to this at all. As a director on the board, I had no idea this was going on. As far as integrity is shot when you don't have transparency. And then there's trust. And I'm definitely missing my trust now for staff, to be very honest with you. A bigger thing is now I have a trust issue with members. They don't trust me anymore. They're looking at this going, wait a minute, you told me you had the 3 prongs. And I wanted to bring this up because I think with the action of this new organization, it makes resolution 2019-10 a paper tiger. So I wanted to bring those comments forward. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Kohler. Jessica, you thoughts here?
Yeah, so Kohler, I appreciate the comments. This is a group that, yeah, it's been formed recent. So when I reported on it, it was definitely started up last month. We've not been doing social media on it, Kohler, because I wanted to, again, like I mentioned, inform the board. This is a group of utilities across the US that we started talking and saying, you know what, we'd like to be a part of the energy transition. It has nothing to do with the 3-pronged strategy, because it is in regards to looking at the G&T structure for sure, which is part of the 3-pronged strategy. So it still meets the 3-pronged strategy, but it's also intended to go to members of Congress and policy and FERC and talk about the infrastructure bill that's coming down and actually supporting Tri-State, which we have, in regards to paying for their stranded assets. So part of this group, we're actually going hand in hand with Tri-State up to the Hill. And I've talked to Dwayne about this, that we're going to use this group to actually lobby on behalf and support those, that legislation that Tri-State wants. So more, you know, it is a new co-op organization, and a part of the co-op principles is cooperation amongst cooperatives. So that's why it was formed. We're also working with NRECA on it. They're fully aware. I met with them last week on the group. And this is an opportunity for, again, a small group of utilities to go up to the Hill to bolster a lot of the efforts that NRECA is doing. And then, you know, in the future, it could also be an opportunity for Tri-State to join. And I've talked to Dwayne about it. So I hope that people don't see it as negative. I've been really working with the group to make sure it's high level and it stays high level in regards to being positive. So I apologize for, you know, the lack of information, but it has been a new organization, and I've been focused on broadband and trying to get the RFP done for with Tri-State on the buy down payment. Yep. So haven't spent a ton of time on it, but more to come on that.
So Kohler, can I ask you a follow-up question? Is your core concern that that this is a bad idea, or is the core concern that we weren't previewed with enough time to process what was happening, and as a result you were blindsided with questions from membership that you weren't prepared to answer, or is there a different issue altogether?
It's the second part. Totally blindsided by it, and just what Jessica just now mentioned. I don't think that's a perception from other folks, and I can't defend it at all because I didn't understand it at all. You know, it came out of the blue. I had no idea about it. It was discussed by some of the Tri-State members, and I'm standing there with my pants down. And I think that is unfair to us as directors on this board. So the second part, yes.
Agreed. So maybe as a follow-up item, Jessica, could you maybe do a write-up that provides a little more substance with some talking points, just as an educational exercise for this board, so that we have some more awareness of the group, why we're doing it, just pretty much what you said there, so that we can be better prepared for membership questions.
Sure. And just to remind folks, I did send an email about this group a couple weeks ago. So you do have an email that I sent about the group and a little bit about why it was formed. So
Great.
I would just refer you back to that email, but
Okay.
I will send you a second one.
You don't have to rewrite. If it's all there, just bump it back up to the top of the inbox. Terrific. Thank you. Rachel, you were next.
Yeah, I guess my question is, I was just looking sorry, I was looking through the executive report, noticed conversations with the mayor. I know that, in our COW, we were talking about broadband, a lot of government funding, need for collaboration, cooperation, etc. In years past, we've met up with the city council and the county commissioners, kind of governance body to governance body. Do we have that on our books at all coming forward? I was at a county commission work session the other day, and it was interesting, the disconnect. They were talking broadband. I was inviting them to the COW. They, just there's some disconnects. So it'd be nice to kind of get us all together if possible.
I'm sorry, I believe that was a question to you, Jessica. Which one?
Yeah, so I just wrote that down. Rachel, they've mentioned this before, but with COVID, I talked to Jose yesterday. They've kind of been delaying this until things cool off. And the city's actually gone back to requiring masks. So I think that there's a little bit of concern. Usually in the past, we've done like a lunch with the county commissioners and then the council. So when they're ready, we'll get that back on the books.
Great, and I don't know if, maybe it's too awkward, but we are all in the Zoom rooms these days. So maybe that's something that is accessible if there's more of a time. I'm just thinking we've got budget coming up. We've got all these funding opportunities coming down. So just, if there's a digital solution that might be more timely, I'd certainly be open to that.
Great, good feedback, thank you. You good? Rachel, great, thank you. Sue, you're up.
All right, thank you. And I have two comments or questions, but the first one's going to be a little lengthy, so I'll hold the other one until other people have had a chance to talk to. But I too am concerned about the next gen co-op, and I have a lot of concerns and questions about it. And looking at the Facebook site and the website, it looks like this was started clear back in January of 2021. And yet, like Kohler, this is the first time we've heard about it. So that in itself concerns me, again, with the, transparency, integrity, trust. We should have been hearing about this clear back in January or February if we are going to be part of it. So that was one of them. And then question is this part of Next Gen America, or is it affiliated with that at all?
No, and Sue, again, I haven't even been involved in the Next Gen cooperatives until just the last month. So if it was built before that, it wasn't that I was a member or involved. And no, there's no connection with that group.
Okay, but you're president, so you've only been involved in a month, and you are president, is that correct?
They just created the board in the last month.
Okay, all right. So has La Plata Electric paid any of the legwork for this formation, or was that already paid by somebody else?
No, we just put together the funding structure. And so that's just been created. So we do have to fund this group.
We being La Plata?
All the co-ops are involved in it.
Okay, do we know what that cost is going to be yet?
We're still building that out because, like I mentioned, this is a new group. So we're still building that out.
Okay. And then even a bigger concern, and this will be more to Graham as well, is that in our bylaws, Article 13, it talks about membership in other organizations. And it says the co-op shall not become a member of any other organization without an affirmative vote of the board of directors. So here we are already part of this group, but it's against our bylaws. So that was a concern. And then in our policy 103, it talks about the CEO participating in other groups, and that's fine to do as long as it's not real time consuming. And if it is time consuming, then the board has to vote on that. So I guess another concern is how much time is this going to take away from La Plata Electric for you to be president of this organization?
Graham, can you jump in on the membership? I think that's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. If you could maybe answer the time question real quick while I take a quick look at some of our other policies and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, it is a good question. We have a 1 hour meeting once a month. So it's not a lot of time, and actually it's a good opportunity. Again, it's part of the cooperative principles of coordinating with the other cooperatives. So gathering information. If it was a lot of time, I would definitely not do this because my primary focus is definitely getting us to a broadband decision, and also the BDP and working with Tri-State and the CTP work.
Thank you for those answers, Jessica, while Graham's looking at the bylaw. You know, and again, in looking at that bylaw, it appears that even though this is a already happened thing, it still goes against our bylaws. So I think that we as directors need to have a lot more information before we decide if we, being La Plata Electric, want to be part of this group, at least in my viewpoint. I don't know anything about Next Gen Co-op, and I was concerned that it might be affiliated with Next Gen America, or people might think that it is because of the name just in and of itself. But we as directors have no idea what the organization really wants to do other than what was in your email. So I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions before we as directors might want to move forward with being part of it.
Yeah, and Graham, I hope you found that, because the other issue is that the board did pass a resolution giving me the authority to join organizations. So we are using that authority. So Graham, have you?
Yeah, I mean, that was one. I was going back to resolution 2021-01, which delegated authority for evaluating organizations and managing memberships in outside organizations. I'm also sort of reviewing 102, 103, and 104. There are some delegations of authority to the chief executive officer on that. But yeah.
Let me cut you off here so that you're not trying to make a judgment right here. I think Sue is right. If we have made a mistake and stepped into an organization without authority, we need to remediate that. But let's not make that decision. Try to decide that on the fly. Can you just take responsibility to come back with a substantive explanation on, did Jessica have the authority? Did she move appropriately? If she didn't, what's the corrective action? And then let's just take this whole conversation offline so that you're not being asked to, put an answer together on the fly.
And I appreciate this. I mean, this is a very, very good question that deserves a very thoughtful answer. I don't want to rush this answer. It's a very good question.
And if it's inappropriate, if we made a mistake, then we'll take corrective action. Sue, does that get to the heart of your concern there? Does that work for you?
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that, because I think that, like Kohler, I felt totally blindsided. And I even went back to like October of last year, trying to look through all the minutes and all the emails to see if I had missed something. So I do appreciate taking some time to review this. Thank you.
Fair enough. And then just as a reminder, you know, we have a lot of information flowing through this organization, and a lot of it's coming in by email. There was some information that was communicated prior to this meeting about the group. If it was insufficient or wasn't called out enough, we can do better. But there was some information disseminated out there. And then as far as should we belong in this organization at all, did Jessica have the authority? Let Graham come back to us with something substantive there. Okay. Joe, you've had your hand up for a while, and then let's come back to Kohler.
Yeah, just a question explanation. It's on page 72 in my packet. It says that you worked with CFC on queries related to the Power Vision credit facility. I'm just curious what that credit facility is and what it means.
I believe that's to Carl.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. That's in order to finance our 5-year capital work plan that was presented as part of last year's budget. Obviously, we need to borrow some money to go up to build out the system as Dan and his team put that together. We went out to CFC to get see what the best funding option was, and this Power Vision facility gives us flexibility, a very low interest rate, and it means we can draw down as we need the funds rather than going out and borrowing $50 million right now and immediately being committed to paying for it. We borrow as we build.
And so this Power Vision is part of CFC's, that's their term?
Correct. Yep, it's a CFC product.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Great. All right, thank you. Joe, Kohler, you're up next, and then Rachel.
Well, I was talking to a member last week, and he has an ETS system. He got involved with this new partnership, and he was extremely appreciative of what LPEA is doing. He worked with somebody, Dennis, I can't remember the last name, from LPEA, and he just wanted me to pass it on that he really appreciates that service and this new partnership because it helps him out. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Kohler. Rachel, comments?
Yeah, kind of a couple similar things. The e-bike project that y'all helped ForCore with. One of the folks that I work with is a recipient of that e-bike, and she is so excited and loves it, and it saves her money and gets her places. So thank you so much for partnering on that. Similarly, I just wanted to applaud. I saw really cool. I was reading through some of the LPEA press releases and materials. I think this one was in the Pagosa Sun, but or Pagosa paper. But I liked how y'all compared our messaging, time of use, and rate savings around the notion of a traffic jam, because we now have them in our area. Yay. And then the other was just a question I have about, do we have any sense, what are the drivers behind the record-setting solar? And then if I recall, so one would be the drivers around that, if we know what's going on. And then the second is just, at some point, if I am recalling accurately in a presentation, we were just looking at how much the feedback onto the grid from excess production was kind of moving us towards our cap. And I'm at the time it was a non-issue because we didn't have enough, we just didn't think we were there yet, but I know Dan, you told us to kind of keep an eye on it. So I'm curious if this burst in solar is kind of becoming an issue or something you look at.
I'll touch on the drivers first you were asking about, and I think a lot of it's word of mouth. Things just tend to grow exponentially. When that comes around, the neighbors see their neighbors getting something, they look at it and they do it. And also aggressive marketing. The solar installers have definitely been out there. We have new players. The other thing that's going on is as net metering laws buckle down in other states, particularly Utah, those installers are now coming, and it's more national branches, it's not local installers, are coming to our area and hooking people that way. Amanda's dealing with a lot of people that way. That's why we instituted our preferred installer program, because we've had so many of these outsiders coming in that aren't familiar with our policies and aren't really telling the full story to the member. So that's part of it. Then your question about the capacity and everything else. So a couple of things going on there. Particularly what we're watching for is what we're referring to as excess generation. That's what people generate in excess, not on a daily basis, but on an annual basis. Right now we have our limit set at 150%. That's pretty gracious. It's more gracious than 120% required by law. And that's something we definitely need to consider. We have maxed out our 5%. There's some nuances with the new power supply options coming in that might give us some headroom in about 3 years or so. I'm seeing this really not being 3 to 4 years, maybe not being as much of an issue, but right now it is. And so not every net metered system that gets added to our system is a problem by any means. It's only those that have excess generation. So that's what we need to watch, is the excess generation part. If it's not excess, it doesn't count towards the 5%.
Perfect. Thank you. Call in Sue in a second. We are, just as a quick time check, so everybody's paying attention to the clock. This is the substance discussion, so we should obviously continue on, but we're coming to the end of the window here for item 4. But let's continue on for a few more minutes. Sue?
Thanks. This question probably goes to Hillary, in that I was looking back in our Google Drive as far as letters and documents that come in that the staff reply to, and it doesn't look like we've had any written correspondence since early 2021, but somebody had mentioned that they had, sent in a complaint and never was responded to. So that's why I was looking in Google Drive for a response. Are we not putting those in there anymore, or what's going on there?
We should be. That's something that Janelle does and that I back up on. Do you have any idea how that complaint was sent in? Was it a letter or an email or?
I don't. It was about a high bill. I think it had to do with the demand charge. And I really don't know, other than it was a written request. And so they were expected to get something back in writing and never received anything. Now, it may be as simple as somebody picked up the phone and called them, but they didn't indicate that. They indicated that there was never any response back to them.
Okay. I mean, yeah, our energy engagement team deals with those kind of questions and concerns on a daily basis. Those aren't the type of things that we put our response into the board files. The board files are primarily if, one, a member reached out to you personally, and we want to make sure that you're in the loop and see that we responded, or they're also in there if it's something directly involving the board. But if you are able to follow up with that person and find out who they asked that question of or how they submitted, I'd be more than happy to make sure that they get the response they deserve.
All right, great, thank you. I just kind of was surprised that there wasn't responses in the Google Drive, so that clarifies. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to sort of remind everyone here, we do have a couple of policies on how to formally file complaints too, and so I mean sometimes it might be, if it's a casual, these days things can be as casual as a comment on our Facebook page, and the person submitting it considers that to be a formal complaint, and we are sort of tracking our 300 series policies on it too. So might want to sort of, if you need any assistance from me, Sue, on sort of helping delineate the specific policies that we can, and forms that we have that we can direct these members to, and get it really sort of in our formal complaint queue, I'd be happy to help you with that too.
Terrific, thanks, Graham. All right, Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Hillary, a quick follow-up on Sue's question. I just want to clarify what I think I heard you say. So if it comes to us or if it's about the board, we're going to find that in the member question section of the board. But stuff that goes through the help desk, that goes through the CSRs and such, that we're not going to see because that's in y'all's system, right? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Terrific. Okay, thanks. Any other, we want to push on here. Carl has, still has to do his section, but last call on the CEO report.
John, yeah, John, if I could.
Sure.
Sue, are you on there? I see you sort of switched your camera for a second. I went back and I looked at my advice to Jessica when Next Gen Co-op Consortium reached out to her. Do you mind if I, since this was Sue's particular question, do you mind if I sort of verify that? Because I just see that. Sue, are you there? Okay. Well, I might, if John, if you don't mind, then
do it.
I have
if you think you
looked
can speak with authority, yeah, definitely. You're ready to. I just didn't want you to do it on the fly.
No, I appreciate that, but I have located my contemporaneous advice to her when she was initially, so when she was approached initially, she reached out to me to understand what authority she had under the policies at that time. And so my recommendation to her was that under policy 103, she is allowed to serve on external boards of directors as appropriate. So I understand Sue's concern about, is this going to be too time consuming? Sue, were you able to hear some of this?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just had my picture off, but I can hear.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that you're hearing all this. So yes, so under policy 103, she does, you know, as you are concerned, right, about whether or not this was the authority to serve on boards, and is that going to be too time consuming outside of her primary job as CEO? And you know, that she does have the authority to serve on boards under policy 103. But my primary advice was, you know, earlier that year, back in January, the board had passed resolution 2021-1, where the board authorized the CEO for the 2021 year to join and renew memberships in such organizations as deemed beneficial to LPEA and its members in the CEO's discretion. So I said that, you know, that delegation appeared to be the delegation of the authority contained in the bylaws for the year. And I kind of went back to that board meeting where we passed that. And I think that was sort of the idea of, when that was resolved, the board's check and balance on that was that they were doing that delegation 1 year at a time. So that was my advice to her at the time that she was approached about this a month or so ago. Does that clarify that answer? That was my advice. And she did reach out to me to sort of get my legal opinion on that.
Okay, so your statement here is that there's not a question of authority at that time. There's not a question of authority at this moment.
Not according to that resolution. I think that if the board is going to sort of take this up, you know, then I think there's potential for the board to take this up and perhaps revisit its resolution if it wants. But my advice, so Jessica made this decision, I believe in part on my advice, that she had been delegated this authority at least for 2021 under that resolution. So that's looking back at what I said.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Again, this is that's super helpful. So let's yeah, I'm not sure there's an immediate item here, but I appreciate the context. Thank you. Okay, Sue, do you have your hand up for one more shot here? I'm sorry, meaning one more communication.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it short. I do appreciate, Graham looking that up and making sure we are on track with that. I guess I would just go back to mine and Kohler's concerns that we weren't giving any kind of heads up on this until after it was already done, and we are well involved in it. So going back to the integrity, trust, and transparency, it would have been nice to have known about this 2 months ago or 6 months ago, whatever the time frame was. And with that,
but I think that I'm sorry not to sort of drill on the point. It was sent an email. It was communicated on a timely basis. There was a procedure that was followed, and I'm not sure, that's a fair critique.
Well, I think it is, because the email was sent on August 21st, and that was the very first time we'd even been given any information about it. They even knew it existed. And the email says this is going out to the public. And in fact, it already has, maybe not here, but in other areas. So, word gets around, we hear from our members, well, what in the world's going on here? And we were totally blindsided. We have no idea that it happened until the rest of the world knows at the same time we do. And as directors, we should have heads up on that before it's out there.
Fair enough. All right, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm just wondering a little bit to that point, if the question really is like being alerted to something, or if it's wanting to have a discussion about something before we dive in. And I know we don't want to micromanage, and that's not the goal or not the intent, but I think just always maybe having that lens when decisions like this are is this kind of a strategic level component where having board buy-in or board insight might be helpful, and then just holding off on some of those things so that we can develop that collective dialogue and decision, and then it gives us a better shot, better way to back it up when and if it goes to the public.
Terrific, thank you. We really need to move on this. Can we wrap this up? I think the point's been made. It's been discussed. If you feel strongly, Tim, go ahead. Go ahead. But we need to move on to the financial stuff. We need to get to the broadband stuff.
I hear you, John, and that you want to keep going really quickly, and I appreciate that. Trying to be efficient in the agenda, but I do want to just say that it seems like Jessica has followed the directive of the board and the policies and is in compliance with those. And while there may be some opportunity for improvement in communication around that, there is no violation here. And maybe that means that resolution worked. And we look at it each year and we say, okay, when something like this occurs, we can look to how we could improve the communication around something like this. But I am not personally in favor of taking away that delegation at this point. So I think this is an important issue. If you want to make sure that there's time for that kind of discussion, then we should take it when we can, earlier in the day rather than later. So I appreciate that. Give me the time there. Thanks.
Absolutely. It's an important subject. So thanks for the comment.
So John, if we want to move on, I hear Kohler and Sue, and I appreciate the feedback. I just want to make sure you guys understand that this is, again, I was not involved 6 months ago. This is something that just came up. You guys gave me the three-pronged strategy. This is part of that, in addition to the resolution that Graham mentioned. And, the point is finding resolution with our G&T. And if you feel that this is against it, then let me know, but that's not proving to be fact. And we'll talk about that later, but we are working with Dwayne and Tri-State to come to a positive resolution, and that's coming to a head. And this group in no way, shape, or form is impacting that. could we do a better job of communicating to the board? Yeah, I hear that, absolutely, and we will do a better job. And I apologize if people felt blindsided. This group, you know, they do a big splash on their end. We did not, and that got ahead of me, how they went about doing that. And so that's where I quickly sent out the email, because I saw the press release when it came out that week before. So that was unfortunate. They got ahead of us. And yeah, I'm the board chair, so I should know, and that's definitely true. But as a new fledgling organization, I think we're all trying to figure out how to do it as well. So, you know, that's hurt. I hope you have some grace for us, though. Trust and respect is a very important thing, but I hope that you guys also understand people make mistakes, and it's important to give people that grace and forgiveness. And so I'm just asking that you guys do that and understand that, you know, we're not always perfect, and we can always improve on communication, and we will improve on communication with this going forward. So just hope that you guys can give that to me. I'd appreciate that.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Carl, you're up.
Thanks, John. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? I'm hopeful this will be relatively short. It's kind of more of the same in terms of financials this month. The only difference I would highlight between July and June and May is it was not as strong of a sales month. I know when I spoke at Finance and Audit Committee, I had indicated that I thought we were relatively close or perhaps over forecast on sales. But that was purely in our residential class, where we have been seeing that kind of robust sales volume all year. So with that said, we did meet all of the board's financial goals in July quite comfortably. In terms of our operating margin for the month, we were $36,000 under forecast, all of that arising from the sales less cost of power. So we were 5% under on revenue, offset by cheaper purchase power as a result of the 2% rate reduction. So we missed by around 100,000 on gross margins. We recovered a fair bit of that with our expenses. So we end up at $36,000 under forecast for the operating margin for the month of July. But with that said, we're still $2.2 million ahead of the pace year to date. So all of the financial goals were met. And then just to highlight some highlights here, for the full year, our operating costs are $1.4 million below forecast. Pretty much all of that saving was at the beginning of the year. And we're, as you've noticed in the last 3 or 4 months, we've been up to very close to our budgeted operating costs. Labor is coming in almost exactly where we budgeted it, which is encouraging. Want to point out delinquent accounts again, almost like unreal levels of delinquency, so low that 0.04% equates to less than $3,000, which is, in the context of our book of receivables, negligible. I mean, it's a rounding difference. So the only thing where we've highlighted yellow or orange, depending on your point of view, is our kilowatt hours are below forecast for the year, but that isn't translating to lower gross margins, mainly because as we've mentioned, the residential sales have continued to be robust, and also the 2% rate reduction is helping at the gross margin level. So really, it's my pleasure to say there's nothing really exciting, which is always nice. July was pretty tight to budget, and I would anticipate that will continue. Although Dan has pointed out, I think that was Monday, Dan, you sent that email, sales for August are not looking particularly strong. It's, as I'm sure you've noticed if you're wearing your coat today, it's not been the warmest month of August, and AC usage, both domestic and commercial, we anticipate being the driver for lower sales in August. And that's all I had. Any questions? I don't know who was first.
Go ahead, Colin.
Carla?
Just on page 37-106, it's the statement of operations.
Yep.
It reflects down under the other capital credits and patronage dividends that our actual is 0, but we forecast 55,000.
Yep.
And then if we look at on page 39 on the let's see, the forecast revision, it again reflects that it's going to be down 55,000. So did we have somebody that's not paying their capital refunds like they did before, or where does that come from?
No, that's we thought we'd get it in July. We actually got it in August. So the restated statement of operations is purely 7 months of actuals plus 5 months of budget. So in that, we kind of miss it completely because we budgeted it in July, but we actually got it in August, and it will be more than 55,000 from CFC.
Perfect. Thank you.
Tim?
Thanks, Carl. So looking at the sales numbers that you point out, it's like, it seems to me that residential, as you mentioned, is doing better than we expected through this year. And it's somewhat making up for the less than we expected in industrials. And I look at the industrial, or we call it commercial over 1,000 kVA on our charts. It's below budget and it's below last year. And I just wonder if we think that's the new trend, or is that the new, or just a blip for this year, or, you know, it has a big impact on our load factor and our revenue. And so maybe not as much on our margins, but so I'm just curious if there's any insight on that.
Dan, do you want to address that? Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, although we get together with our industrial members about this time every year and ask them what their projections are, what compressors you're going to be running, how you're going to operate, they're real forthcoming with us, try to tell us the answers. But when what this has happened in the last year, they've had some compressors fail, and then they get things rewound and put them back online. Well, they find out during the meantime, after that one's been down, it's like, hey, we could operate with that one down longer term than we thought. And so then sometimes they don't come back online. It wasn't necessarily the intention, but then, you know, things do drop offline there. As you noted, it doesn't have a huge impact on gross margins or on our actual margins, but it can lead to lower sales, which have other repercussions that trickle down. You know, like we talked about the 5% of a lesser number makes a difference. So we do our best to forecast those, and sometimes it's hard to know what they're going to do. But I don't anticipate that necessarily coming back on. It's been down for a long time, and I would think that we're at that trend now. Usually we forecast a steady reduction in industrial load. There was one compressor that dropped off that just never came back on. Those it caused the shift.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Is that everything for me?
Okay. Let's move on then. That concludes item number 4 on our agenda. Where are we in terms of timing. Why don't we go ahead and take why don't we are scheduled to take a break in a little bit, but why don't we take the break now? Let's let everybody stretch their legs. It's 10:23 now. Why don't we be back at 10:30? Sound good? Perfect. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Let's pick this up. We are on. We're going to move to agenda item number 5. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, agenda item number 5, which is the broadband committee update, and I believe that Kirsten is going to lead this with a recommendation and a possible vote.
Sure, great. Thank you, John. So my report from the meeting is that we had a meeting and we came up with a recommendation, and then I think we had a very good cow, that would be committee of the whole, on Monday, where we hashed this out and had very good reception too. So I would like to introduce resolution number 2021-12 for those members who are listening. This is a goal that's been being built on for the last couple of years, actually. And it basically says that whereas we have broadband communication for our current needs, and whereas we need it for our future needs, and in alignment with our concern for community, and because we've been asked to take a lead on this, that we are resolving to pursue a funding and partnership strategy that will enable broadband connections to its membership by 2030 without increasing electric rates to do so. So that's what we're looking at right now. It does require a motion to get started on a vote and or a discussion on this.
So move.
Seconded by John Lee.
Okay, so we've got Rachel and John, and then Kohler, I see your hand is up, sir.
So I want to say thank you to the broadband committee. The package that you presented at the cow, I thought was much better than what I was expecting. I really appreciate it. The one thing I do want to know, though, is what's not in this resolution is to capture some of the other comments and thoughts that were at the cow, such as we wouldn't spend money until that actual grant money is in the bank. Is that going to be done through policy or something else? Or how do we capture some of those other things that you were talking about? Because that's where you really got my support. But I'd like to have that captured somehow.
Yeah. So may I try and answer on that? So the goals, the thing about strategic goals is they are meant to be, fairly high level. They don't spell out the how exactly we get to it. So what we need to make sure is that it's clear enough for the staff to be able to take this and run with it, and without increasing rates to do so, I think means it. I'm not sure, but it's not. It may not necessarily be in the goal itself, because if you try to get a goal too fine, then it's no longer a goal. It's more of a dictation. So that's my thought on that. I'd be eager to hear other folks. I get what you're saying, Kohler. We need to capture that. We need to make sure people know that, hey, we're not out there spending money until we know that money's there. But it's not necessarily here unless we put it as a whereas.
Now,
go ahead, John.
To be clear, major capital purchases of that nature have to go through the board anyway. So it's sort of intrinsic. If it's not possible for them for the organization to go out and install a bunch of fiber or buy a bunch of fiber without our consent, at scale in what you're talking about. So I think you have it at two levels. You have it in this resolution as it's shown here, and then you have it again, with the financial controls that are already in place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Joe, you're up.
Yeah, I'd asked yesterday, suggested taking out the reference to speeds and you explained why you wanted it in, which sounded good, and now it's out. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm fine with this. Just kind of curious why you wanted to take that out.
Kirsten, you want to, do you have a comment there?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why we ended up taking it out. I think once we started working on this in that smaller group, we're like, let's just keep it as basic as possible. And yes, I made that great argument of why I wanted the federal speeds in there, and then I dropped it. So I don't have a really good reason. I'd be happy. Sorry.
No,
I look kind of silly.
Yep. So we have an open.
I think it's better to leave it out just because it just gummed up the goal a bit. So thanks.
Great.
Okay.
So we have an open, all right. Never mind. Fine. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. So Ted, you're up. And then John Lee.
Yeah, thanks. So I just wanted to make sure, you know, in the interest of disclosure and clarity to, you know, and also because, you know, I'm new here and a lot of people are just getting, you know, just meeting me and getting used to me. But it is in my disclosure statement, you know, that I am a board member of FastTrack. I think probably everybody knows that on this board. And so as a matter of making people aware of potential conflicts of interest, that is disclosed. I certainly knew, you know, especially after the cow, I certainly knew this was coming up. So I dug in pretty deep on this issue of, you know, dual directorship and where potential conflicts may or may not exist and what to do about those. And I'm going to try and keep this super short. You know, in this specific case, it appears to me that I would have the capability to act in the best interest of both LPEA as a director and FastTrack as a director. You know, it's not an issue that, you know, it's not a transactional issue specifically between LPEA and FastTrack where there certainly would be a conflict. So I've dug into that. You know, I also feel that it's really important you know, in a dual director role that we be careful not to shirk our responsibilities. You know, I was elected to do a job for LPEA or for the membership of LPEA, and that's to serve in the best interest of LPEA. But the same can be said for FastTrack. You know, in fact, you know, it's really up to the LPEA board to sort of approve my participation on the FastTrack board. So, you know, I feel I have that responsibility. On the other hand, you know, and I love the fact that we keep coming back to you know, kind of our ideals. I do think that transparency and trust are critical issues. You know, sometimes even more important than policies and regulations. I mean, we can have all the policies and regulations we want, but this thing falls apart if we can't work together. LPEA has, you know, in our code of conduct policy, a statement that, you know, super paraphrasing, but says that, you know, even perceived conflicts should be avoided. And to that end, you know, I really want to make sure that, you know, decisions that I make are respected by the full board. And so, you know, I've given you my sort of view on my role in participating in this resolution. You know, I feel like I could act in the best interest of both organizations, but you know, if there are comments from the board, I would love to hear. You know, again, I'm the newbie, so I don't want to presume anything, and I don't want someone, you know, like Kohler brought up, you know, getting blindsided, you know, by talking to members about something that he wasn't aware of, and so I don't want that to happen as a result of my participation in this. So, you know, if there are board members or really even advice from staff that would indicate that the perception of conflict on this issue would cause a problem for LPEA or the board, I'd be happy to entertain that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ted. Let's let's hear from Tim real quick, and then get to the heart of it. See if anybody has any direct comments to your request, to your question. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't aware he was going to ask a question of the other directors, so I'm going to leave my hand up. I want to speak after everyone else does, if possible. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, so just to sort of guide the conversation, so Ted's essential question was he believes that it is his opinion that he can act on this, he can vote on this resolution without representing conflict, but he was offering an open question of whether anybody feels strongly one way or the other if he should abstain from the vote. And it was really just a question of opinion from other people who had who could speak with knowledge. So if we could have that particular line of questioning addressed, and then we'll move back to the main line of question around the resolution itself. So Kirsten.
Yeah. So Ted, I feel your not your pain, but your dilemma a bit. So I was a dual director. I was a tri-state board member and an LPEA board member for a couple of years. And I was really thrilled when there were those opportunities that involved both organizations that were in the best interest of both organizations, that I could vote and not have to recuse myself. There were enough times that you end up having to recuse yourself. But if you in your heart can say, this is in the best interest of both organizations, I'm okay voting on this, then the only concern becomes about, is it going to look bad? And usually the look bad is something that your peers or board members might tell you, this is going to look bad, we're going to vote you out of this. So, but you don't have to volunteer to recuse yourself based upon if you feel that you're working in the best interest of both. If we feel like this is going to look bad, we might have to vote to ask you to recuse. Sound fair?
Terrific.
That's my opinion. Okay.
Terrific. So let's get some other comments in this subject, and then we'll, like I said, get back to the main event. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, given that LPEA is 75% owner of FastTrack, I don't see any issue as far as a conflict. Ted's not representing any business interest outside of LPEA or himself, so I have no problem with that. The other thing is I would like to, in a future meeting, have a discussion about the FastTrack Board of Directors. I've never known how those are elected, how they're, why they're appointed, and our nexus with those directors. So I'd like to put that in the queue if we could. Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks, Joe. I'll make a note of that and follow up offline. Any other comments on Ted's question? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Ted, ultimately, your vote is your choice. Sue, did you want to weigh in on that issue, or were you coming out to another matter? Okay. So yeah, so ultimately your vote is your choice. Thanks for your consideration on the matter. And let's get back to the main event here. There is an open motion, and so we are in discussion now on that open motion. And so the next person on deck is Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, mine kind of harkens back to Ted's comment, because I wanted to hear what the rest of the board said about his question of appearance of conflict of interest. And I'm still a little uncertain about that. But I will tell you that I'm also a dual director in this case. And from the standpoint of that dual director fiduciary responsibility, I'm very, very comfortable that a vote on this resolution by me is in the best interest of both organizations. I feel no need to recuse myself from this. However, I do want to emphasize, like Ted did, that if the rest of the board feels that a vote by me as a dual director would provide an appearance of conflict of interest, then I will recuse. So I am leaving this somewhat up to the rest of the board, and I would like to get weigh-in from the rest of the board as to whether or not if anyone feels this is a conflict of interest or an appearance of conflict of interest, I hope that they will speak up, because that will affect my decision on the vote. Thanks.
Terrific. All right, thanks for the comment. Let's raise my hand and get in line here. But to continue to navigate the process here, Sue, you're up.
All right, thank you. And mine will be short. I did send out an email in response to the resolution draft yesterday. I don't think we address where the money is going to be coming from well enough in this resolution. And again, I think there may be concern from our members that, yeah, maybe we're not going to raise our electric rates, but how is this going to be paid for? So I just kind of wanted to reiterate that I think we needed to have a little more details about the financing part of that. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Rachel?
To the question about optics and conflict of interest, because this is so high level, I don't think there's a perception of conflict of interest. You know, if we got down into the weeds with strategy or moving forward with things, maybe that's a place for recusing, but I support you all participating.
Terrific. Thank you, Rachel. Dan?
Yeah, I don't see any conflict on this level either, so vote your pleasure, both of you. And as far as this has come to us through the budget process and whatnot, and it's not, they're going to pursue funding and a partnership strategy. So this is very high level, generic, and the budget process and policies down the road is going to take care of the details. So I encourage a vote for this and go forward.
Terrific. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm not going to dig in any deeper than pretty much my thoughts were exactly what Dan's were. I think this is going to get the job done. And then I too, like Ted, spent a couple hours yesterday and the day before digging in on conflict of interest, and I don't see there is no conflict of interest that I can see in any legal sense of the word, and I don't think that there's going to be a perception issue as well either. So I would encourage both of you guys to vote your hearts, and that is my opinion on the matter. Lower my hand and go back to being a meeting manager. Graham.
Yes, if I could offer a quick point of sort of order on this. What we've had here is that both of our dual directors have identified their own personal issues with fiduciary duties, and they feel satisfied with that. And then according to our policy 129, they have disclosed a potential conflict of interest. So it would be up to the other board of directors to raise an issue about that. So I think we might need to have a speak now or forever, just for the record, a sort of speak now or forever hold your peace on that. And we can then presume that if nobody has raised that issue, that none of the disinterested directors are concerned about the appearance of the conflict of interest.
Terrific. Thanks, Graham. Okay, any other comments before we vote on this resolution? Okay, so all in favor of approving the resolution 2021-12, all in favor, hold your hand up and say aye.
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 Aye. Keep them up there for a second so we get a vote count on this. Okay. Okay, all in favor, all opposed, say nay. Hold your hand up, please. Okay. Hold your hand up for a second. You guys got the counts, and all abstaining, please hold up your hand up.
John, this is Janelle.
Yeah.
I can't see everyone. I can only have like a little screen on. Okay. So I only
There
have
you go.
Sue opposed. Was there another one that opposed? Okay.
Okay. And all abstaining, hold your hands up, please. Okay. The motion passes. Kirsten?
Yeah, John, before we leave this, may
Go
I?
ahead.
Okay, I just
I was
wanted
about
to say.
I was just about to say, nice job. But
Yes,
okay.
well, thank you. I just wanted to thank staff and the broadband committee, and I wanted to give a special shout out to our very involved members. We got a petition with over 500 signatures on it. We had more people attending our broadband committee members than we frequently see at our board meetings. So this is a very involved membership, and I really appreciate it. They help make the process better. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that comment. Yeah, this was a lot of work, and you guys worked hard on this issue, and it's good to see important progress. And now it's back to the staff to take this policy and hopefully use it to create some lasting value for the membership. So more to come on how we do that. Joe, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wonder if we could give just a 2-minute explanation on the money for people who are tuned in, so they know what we're talking about here, and that, again, a little more explanation that's not coming from electric rates. I just think it'd be good to have on the record, on the recording, more about just a little bit for the people who didn't attend the COW meeting.
Jessica, you or me?
Whatever you prefer. I'm happy to.
I'll get started and you correct me, okay? So thanks, Joe. So there is a lot of funding that is becoming available, both on the federal level and on the state level. We've got the ARPA, we've got the new money that's being done just in the last couple of weeks. On the state level, we've got DOLA, we've got DORA, and then from a partnership standpoint, and Jessica has been working with a lot of folks that have been knocking on her door saying, please work with us. And then this is our go ahead saying, yeah, we'll work with you. So those folks are the ones who can bring some of that funding to the table. We can then leverage that funding so that we can help them to put in cheaper fiber, and it helps them meet our operational needs at the same time. And so it's a win-win-win all around, and that's what this is about. This isn't go out and we're going to make our ISP and we're going to put out all sorts of fiber everywhere. This is on an as needed and on an as agreed to partnership basis. We are going to go out there and really take advantage and really get our members full use of what we're putting out there. Described correctly? Anybody want to add more?
Perfect.
Carry on. Excellent. Thank you. Holly?
Yes, thank you. So when I started preparing for the utility of the future discussion, I got permission to reach out to Dominic May. And he gave me a very high level discussion of what is going to be required for the grid of the future. But one of the things that he pointed out, and it kind of relates to Rachel's earlier questions in the dashboard segment, but LPEA is already going to be investing some money into this fiber backbone just for our own operational purposes. And one of the things that Dominic pointed out, and I'm not going to try to get too deep in the weeds in this because every time I read his email, I learn something new. But as we add EV loads, and as we add solar generation, and as we add beneficial electrification, and as we add a bunch of those measures, what happens is those load flows, like you were asking about earlier, Rachel, it's really hard for our transmission operator to see those. So we have to have the DER platform properly supported by a fiber optic backbone in order to be able to properly integrate all that great stuff that we're adding into our system, as well as, for safety and to move into the future. Did I get that right, Dan?
Yep, that's, got to be able to communicate all these things.
Great. All right, thank you, Holly. Joe?
Yeah, and correct me or interrupt me, but again, folks should understand that we're looking at an investment of outside money that could range from, I think, 30 to 50 or $60 million. And so this is no small undertaking on our part and for the potential partners coming in. So this is major leagues. This is major league finance and spending.
Nice. Well said. Well said. Bob?
Real quickly, I know we're moving on. Thanks for all the work the broadband committee has worked for a long time. I think about 1.5 years now to get here. So they deserve credit for that, and staff supporting that. Somewhere along the line, it seems to me like we want the resolution at a real high level, but as it starts to disintegrate into an actual plan, it seems like there's some information we could communicate about timeframes when things might be implemented, because the resolution says we're going to do this by 2030. And so if I just read that, I'm thinking, wow, it's going to take a long time before, we'll have new internet suppliers. So I assume there's other things things we hope will happen sooner. And I think we might be able to communicate that, and I'd encourage that.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay. Let's move on. All right, so next item up, we had our break, so I would like to plow through here. And the next item up is going to be the Finance and Audit Committee update.
Okay, I'll take that. So I'm the new chair of the Finance and Audit Committee as of the August meeting. So getting rolling on that. The meeting was held at the normal time, August 12th. In attendance were committee members from the board, Tim Wheeler and Kirsten Skian, and staff members Carl and Jessica. And so as Carl's already done, we reviewed the finances and obviously see what good, healthy shape the finances are in. One thing we asked Carl, and he agreed, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Carl, sometimes we obviously have to talk about the finances before they've been finalized and sent to the board. So we asked that preliminary financials be sent via email prior to that meeting and include all the board members as well. And I believe Carl agreed to that. And so those are confidential numbers that haven't been approved, but we'd have something in front of us to look at as we go over that. The other thing we did that was brought up at the July board meeting, that when do the goals get revisited? And because we're exceeding goals like the margin goals significantly, and you might want to think about that down the road, but what we discussed without an official motion, but agreed to, and maybe we'll formalize this more later, is that the goals would be revisited every other year. They'll stay the same this year. So next year, and time frame we didn't set on that, but my thought would be that it's a part of the budget process, as you're building a budget to achieve goals. So in next year, not this year, but next year's budget process, as part of that, financial goals would be reviewed. Some of those goals, just to editorialize a little bit, like the margin goal that we're significantly exceeding, it's important to note what a significantly different year it is this year, and it's frankly great to be exceeding a goal rather than the other way around. And that goal we're going to get a lot closer to being just above goal before long, because that goal has a stair step in it where it goes from 1% to 1.5% to 2% and on over the next few years. And over time, especially as we get past COVID, expenditures have been under budget. They're likely to be at budget. So we're going to get closer, but we'll review it every other year. Lastly, just a couple more items. We're in the beginning of the budget process. Staff is already well underway in that. Carl talked in some detail about how really the bottom up or zero base budgeting process is going well. People aren't just taking last year's number, pasting it over, adding 5% and hoping for the best. They're really building it from an activity base and a zero base up from the bottom by departments, creating real accountability and ownership. And that process as I understand it, Carl, is well underway, and I assume next month you'll give us, and at next Finance and Audit Committee, we'll have more of the milestones of when that's going to be accomplished. Lastly, we had executive session.
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
do you mind, just because the NDA is involved in this, if you would like to report on the executive session, if we go into the executive session of this board to report on that, I'd appreciate that.
I'm only going to say that we had an executive session and there were items related to the RFPs were discussed, and details of that will be presented to the board during a special COW in September, I believe September 13th. That's all I was going to say, Graham.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Is that fair, Jessica? That's the plan, is in September?
Correct.
Yep. So that's where I was going to close, is that our next Finance and Audit Committee is, I think it's Thursday the 9th, and we need to stretch those out for the rest of the year, but 9 a.m. on the 9th, and then a special COW going over all the RFP details and all the particulars related to the partial contract options that we're considering will be in a workshop format with the board on September 13. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, just wanted to, so with the cow, do we have a sense of time frame? And then also, I was reading through the email thread about, trying not to pair cows and board meetings in the same week. Just maybe this is not, we're too close on this one to do any shifting around, but yeah, just throwing it out there. I know for me in this particular season, it's quite hard to take 2 full days off work in 1 week.
Great. Thank you. Jessica, you look like you have a comment.
Yes, I believe, Rachel, that's a good point, and we'd really like to do that in the future. Unfortunately, because the board meeting is on the 15th of September, the earliest we could do the COW with the information that we're getting from our consultant is the 13th. And Janelle, did we send out a hold the date for the board? I believe it's on the group. We did create a group calendar as was requested at the last board meeting, and that is on your Google Docs. So please refer to that calendar because that's where we're putting all the holds. Janelle, has that been sent out?
We just have your hold, Jessica, but I can create the final invite and get it out.
Okay.
And that's just that's an afternoon one. It's not quite a full day, or is that a full day?
Well, that was scheduled from 9. It should be from 9 to noon on September 13th.
Okay. Well, it is what it is.
Is that enough time, Jessica? 3 hours, is that going to be adequate for the COW meeting?
Dan, where are you? What do you think about
that? No, what did we have for the broadband committee? I think we had about 3 hours there, and that 4 hours. Okay. No,
but it was.
There's a pretty in-depth discussion that needs to occur there. I think 4 hours might be more adequate.
We could do 8 to noon.
I thought you were going to say 8 hours.
Yeah, Dan, take that. I mean, you're going to cover some important stuff here. Take the time that you need to get it right. People are either going to be able to make this meeting kind of unilaterally or they're not. 45 minutes or an hour on either end of it is not going to change people's availability. So,
and we will have our consultant from Energy Strategies here to review they're running that RFP process and to run through their things. So we'll have something very similar to the format we had with the broadband, where we give an intro, give some history, they'll run through their findings, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion.
Great. Okay. Other comments on this subject before we push on? Tim, go ahead.
So in thinking through the committee of the whole meeting on the power supply discussion, I certainly appreciate the presentation of the results of the bids and so forth, and the finances, as well as those considerations of actually delivering another power from another supplier. However, I think there's also a very important level of discussion that has to go around. What do these two agreements look like? What does the agreement, with our potential power supply, alternative power supply, as well as how does it affect the agreement we have with Tri-State? What does that? And I think those details, the devil in those details, might even be as important as what the price is of the bids that we get back or whatever, right? So from my perspective, we have two areas that are really important to cover. And so I just, I'm not sure what the format necessarily an agenda is of the cow coming up, but we need to address both of those before we as a board can make a decision, in my opinion. So if we can't do it at that one, we may have to have another or whatever. But I think it's really important that we take into account both of those. And I'm not sure how we get through those agreements and have that discussion. We've had almost none so far at this point as to how these things will look. And I personally will be very uncomfortable to make a decision without being able to look through those and have expert advice. So thanks.
Great. Thank you for the input.
Can I hit on that a little bit? I think the intention of the CAL meeting is to select a vendor we want to enter into negotiations with. It's probably not going to be, yes, go for it, these are the agreements we're signing. It's absolutely not going to be that. I envision it taking to the end of the year to get those agreements. Like you said, Tim, there are a lot of details to be hammered out through there. So this is, we're all on board. This is the person we're going to choose to work with and go from there.
Yeah, that's good. And yet there is some back and forth about what that agreement might look at and that particular vendor.
Yeah, we're going to have some very high level parameters, to talk about. This is what they've proposed, but there's going to be a lot of details to work through.
Okay, thank you. Sue, go ahead.
Thank you. If we are still looking at the three-prong approach with Tri-State, then, or without Tri-State, then this kind of lies contrary to that. So I'm thinking at this point, we need to start telling our membership we're no longer doing a three-prong approach. We have ruled out one of those. And if we're not ready to do that, then I think we're premature in actually moving forward with another vendor.
Well, to be clear here, all Bob is previewing here is that there is a bunch of new information coming in the upcoming days. There's no new information that's being delivered here at this meeting now. So coming back and saying, oh, strategy X, Y, and Z is on or off the table based on this conversation, there's no new information. All we're saying here is that we're allocating a significant amount of time in the coming weeks to dig in to a pending decision. There's no decision has been made, that we're going to be an active part of that conversation. And all we're doing is exactly what you guys have asked in the past, which is make sure that you're previewing upcoming key decisions and upcoming important information. And that's exactly what's happening here. This is a preview, This is a preview. So, and then if you feel that way, in the go forward and you come out with a bunch of new information, you're like, wow, I have some opinions about some past strategies and I want to address it. It would make sense to address it then.
Okay, I guess.
And Joan, I was just going to say, and real quickly, this is a committee meeting technically, so we're not able to take binding action in this meeting anyway. This is more of an opportunity for education.
Okay, Thank you for that clarification. I thought I understood Dan to say we would be selecting a company to work with. So thank you.
No. Okay. Kirsten?
Yeah, Sue, thank you for bringing that up. I think it seems to me we're darn close to maybe dropping the one of those, which is do nothing. So we're going to have this cow, and am I hearing there's not going to be anything in that next week from the cow with a resolution that says go forth and choose the best and let's make this partial happen?
I mean, if I could answer that, I would just say that that's procedurally that's a possibility, right? But until that actually happens, we don't know. But I mean, I think it is a possibility that there could be action at the subsequent board meeting.
Okay, so how I'm phrasing this with the members who asked me about it is, we still have a three-prong strategy. It looks like we're going down a partial, maybe eventually a whole, but it looks like the do nothing thing, we're not really doing the do nothing, but the board hasn't acted yet. So that's how I'm phrasing it. Am I getting any trouble in phrasing it that way?
You don't
Not
know
even that way?
Don't front run a decision that you don't have full information on. You
Okay.
don't know that.
Okay.
The only thing that you know right now is we are going to get new information in the coming weeks. That is the only thing that you can say is a statement of fact. And that's what I say to people. People ask me all the time. They're like, what the hell's going on? You know what? I'm real excited because something's coming up soon. TBD.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
But I don't anticipate questions that I don't have the answers to yet. So, okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say from my point of view, what we're doing is the due diligence to stay true to the three-pronged strategy. You don't, we adopted the strategy and then you explore every one of those options. We're doing part of that due diligence, having not made a decision yet, but that's part and parcel to having a three-pronged strategy is you explore those roads thoroughly, and that's what we're doing. So I don't think we've ruled anything in or out. We're doing the due diligence and we'll make a decision down the road, and we're doing exactly what we should in my mind. Thanks.
Great. And just as another quick note, if you are talking to membership and you're getting hit up with questions, we sent out a newsletter on this subject, and it was fully communicated. So I would definitely either brush up on that, go find that newsletter, as it will you'll understand what the members have read that may be prompting their questions, and then refer them back into that newsletter if they weren't aware of it. That is the on the record. That newsletter represents the most substantive on the record communication that we can provide to our memberships at this stage. Everything else is gossip. So, is that accurate? Correct me if I'm out of place, Hillary or Jessica. Okay. Holly, go ahead.
Thank you. As part of our due diligence of our three-pronged strategy, it's my personal opinion, I would like to know what Tri-State's plan is after the responsible energy plan plays out. I would like to know what happens like 2030 to 2050, because right now our contract goes to 2050. And as far as I am understanding from their long-term financial forecast that they released in April of last year, they're going to start building out natural gas plants. And so going forward from that, they do project some pretty high rate increases. But in my personal opinion, when I look at their data and some of the subsequent graphs, that was pretty closely tied to their natural gas expansion. So I'm just, in my mind, I would like to know what their long-term plan is to adequately evaluate what, our best options going forward, because no matter whatever prong we select, it's tied to their long-term process, to their long-term planning. Terrific. Is it possible to get Dwayne Hiley to come down here and talk to us and tell us what that long-term plan is, possibly in a public format with, okay.
So we're getting pretty far afield from the agenda item at hand. I think that those are substantive and important questions that should get answered. And again, correct me, staff, if I'm out of place. That is, we're going to do 4 hours of a cow to dig in on stuff like that. And if you have questions like what you just identified, that that you know you're going to want answered, send an email to Jessica. She'll forward it to the correct staff so that they can show up to the COW prepared and say, hey, I know you had questions about long-term tri-state viability. You wanted to ask them about their debt covenants, whatever your questions are, get them early, and then they can front run them, and they're not going to, they can show up prepared, and they're not going to answer those questions sort of on the fly, which is sometimes challenging given the complexity of the transaction that's ahead of us. Fair enough? Okay. Any other questions or comments on the finance and audit update? Fantastic. All right, let's push on. Bylaw amendment update.
All right, thank you, John. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Fired up for this one. Fun.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Everyone able to see the draft resolution? All right, so just a little background on this. When the recent cooperative governance statute was enacted, it required us to make some more detailed statements about our joint memberships, and that led some board members reviewing that to ask some questions about, well, is our description of joint memberships conform with current law, and it does not. So in about a decade ago, the state of Colorado passed the civil union laws, which put civil unions on par with a married couple. So this is just a proposed bylaw amendment designed to make our bylaws comply with Colorado law. As you can see in Article 1, Section 1, we're just adding or partners in a civil union. Also in Article 1, Section 6, and in Article 2, Section 5. So basically, under our bylaws, the board has the authority to amend the bylaws to conform with law. This has been the law of the state of Colorado for quite some time. I don't know why this was sort of overlooked for the last several years, but it's something that we need to do to come into compliance. It is currently posted on our website where it's supposed to be for a month before we vote on it. So if you come down here, you'll actually see that this will be voted on at next month's meeting. So just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. There's no action to be taken at this point, but just letting you know that that is currently posted on our website for review, and we'll be voting on it next month. If you have any other questions, I can be happy to respond to them via email.
Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, Graham, could you just tell me what's the difference between a civil union and a married couple? Is there a difference?
Not in terms of legal rights under this statute. It's a solemnization thing. So frankly, the timing of this is that civil union predated the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Oberfeld versus Hodges, which allowed for, which recognized a federal constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And so the Colorado's precedent to legal same-sex marriage was a civil union, but civil union is not relationship specific. So heterosexual couples can be married or civil union in a civil union. Homosexual couples can be married or in a civil union, but as a legal status, it's sort of the election of the couple to choose. Do they want to have a solemnized, I'm sorry for mispronouncing that, but a marriage that's recognized through cultural marriage norms, or do they just want to have a state-sanctioned civil union? But legally they are designed to be identical, and so pretty much any place that you refer to marriage, you should equally refer to civil union. They are legally identical constructs in the eyes of the state.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last call on this subject. All right, it is 11:23. We are doing pretty good on timing here. As we've had in past meetings, our attorney update is scheduled precisely at 12:30, so we can't start him any sooner than that. So what I would propose is that we go for another 40 minutes of work, as we've done in the past, work around that session and wrap up some of the other items. Then when we hit noon, we'll take our lunch break on time for 30 minutes, and then we'll pick up the attorney update for FERC Adams County and CPUC. Does that work for everybody? Kirsten?
Yes, sir, it does work. I meant to bring up something when we were talking about the committee report. So when it's appropriate, I'd like to bring that up.
Yeah.
May I?
Let's back it up. Let's
okay,
back it up.
Yeah, super. So when we were talking about those committees, we talked about the broadband committee and the FAC. One of the committees that Sue, you had asked about, perhaps a membership committee or something about surveys. And I know Rachel, in the past, you've had one. You've been trying to push for a committee more about the membership and membership engagement. And I wanted to just bring that up to the board as a whole. We didn't really discuss it when Sue, when you had brought that up. And I just wanted to give a chance for us, if any of us think that that's important and we should move forward on it, then we need to bring it up in a forum like this. Rachel or Sue, I'm kind of looking to you guys since you guys have been the one that have been hot on this. Rachel? Your mouth is full. I'm sorry.
I'll speak up. Thanks, Kirsten, for bringing that up. Both Rachel and I did have an opportunity to review or look at the survey questions that were going to go out to our membership. That survey form is really quite lengthy, but part of it, as Hillary pointed out, was a requirement of NRECA. I was a bit disappointed that we're only sending it out to 400 members, though. That is if we're only sending it out to that many, we'll only get about 10% of those back. So I was hoping it would go to all of the membership, or that they could do it online or via phone or mail, but it looks like it's only going to a small population.
So I'll just clarify.
Okay, so hang on a second here. Let's be clear. This is a discussion not about we're not having a discussion about the survey, the merits of the survey, any specifics about the survey. The question at hand here is Kirsten was asking for a brief discussion on the merits of creating a membership committee, right? Not anything else. Anything below that is that is the purview of the staff, and they have the authority to make those choices with impunity. They don't need our opinion to do their job.
Well, I would think a membership committee then would be a good thing to have.
Fair enough.
Because we're not reaching all of our members.
Excellent. Thank you for that opinion. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I think on this one, we've talked about it a bunch. I do think there's value in it, but we would want to co-design that focus and intent alongside the staff, because again, like, whereas I think what we saw last week is that there is this kind of messy gray area where we as the board interface with the membership, and that's both our responsibility and also something we want to do, and we want to do it well and in a way that dovetails with what the staff's trying to do. And so higher level strategy, I think that's what we've always pushed for, not to get in the weeds, but just to make sure there is a clear strategy for how we as the board can really engage with the community and the membership, and to identify what are some of those issues we're looking to pull out. So I think there's value, but I also have heard, you know, we've presented this to staff a number of times and kind of gotten this like, whoa, we do not want to be micromanaged. And so we would really need to make sure we finesse it.
Terrific. Okay, cool. Thank you for that feedback. Okay, Tim, why don't we get, unless you had a direct comment against Rachel, let's hear what Tim has to say. Kirsten? Is that okay? If Tim goes first? You're on mute. Okay. Oh, great. Tim, go ahead.
So guess I'm just not very clear why we would create a membership committee. You know, from my experience on other nonprofits, membership committees are usually there to recruit members, which isn't a problem for LPEA because if you want electricity, you're a member. You don't have much choice, you know. So I'm not sure what the I don't see a purpose for this. We as directors are, you know, we're charged with representing members and being out there and gathering that input and so forth. You know, is it something that enables the board to get better, I don't know, information on member sentiment or something? Is there some kind of process that we would engage in for, you know, member engagement at a board level? Maybe. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm not sure what it's proposing and how it would, you know, what it's really designed to accomplish. So on that basis, unless somebody has a better explanation or a way to explain that, I'm not quite sure why we would do this. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Kirsten?
Yes, sir. So Tri-State has a membership and governmental affairs committee. And actually in that committee, that's also where rates happen. So finance committee comes up with, this is the money we need. And then the membership committee comes up with, and these are the rates we need to do that. So there is a distinction, and it may be wise to separate that. And I'm maybe wise. But Rachel, I know in the past you have spoke passionately about a committee that focuses more on the members, and again from a strategic level. And I wanted to raise that. You know, Sue's question raised it in my mind when she asked a couple weeks ago about perhaps a committee on. She was thinking just about the survey. I'm thinking about a bigger thing than that, a broader thing than that. So Rachel, help me out here. And if there's really no need for this, that's fine. I was just interpreting that, well, we've had a couple of directors bring this up. We haven't talked about it at a board meeting. We should. And I'm taking this opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's, great. And thank you for that. And this is technically not on the agenda. So let's keep this a little bit tighter here. Let's a couple more comments and then push on. So Rachel.
Yeah, I guess what I would propose, because I think there is value, and to Tim's point, this is not a membership recruitment. I think there might be some semantic conflation going on. Like it's about serving our members, some strategic things. I actually think of as one thought we've had in talking with staff is more, it's like a board relations committee that's both internal board relations and external board relations. What I would propose, because we've tried to propose this in the past, and just, again, I never understand the processes of getting things onto the agenda, but we could work on putting something together to present at, if next month's agenda is too full, like an October meeting or something, and work in partnership with Hillary and team to see what space there is. And Sue,
okay. Yep, great. All right, thank you for that feedback. There's no action here to be taken at this time, but I think Kirsten had wanted at least a brief public discussion to sort of make the case for it. And let's continue this conversation in email and offline and see where it goes. I'm sorry, you have one more comment here, maybe closing comment, Kirsten? Okay, good. Okie dokie then. Onward. So as I said, so we're going to take about 25 more minutes here. We're going to work around item number 7 and number 8 and number 9, and then try to make some progress on number 10, which is our reports. So attorney report, highlights and questions. And we'll go for 25 minutes and then just hit the pause button as we make our way down this agenda item number 10.
Great, thanks. So I'll just refer the board to my attorney report. On director point, I'm not going to share my screen just for attorney-client privilege sake, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If maybe we could sort of give me a brief idea of any question you might have to just determine whether or not we want to take it in executive session or not for attorney-client privileges purposes. I'd appreciate that. You can see again, I've tried to follow the format that I've been using the last few months, where I give an update on legal matters that I'm dealing with, but then I also try and have specific answers to specific legal questions that any director might have. And so, you know, whether you have a question that you'd like me to take up and have a memo for you on at the next board meeting, I'm happy to take that now, or I'm also happy to take that via email in between now and the next meeting as well. So I see Dan has his hand up.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, Graham, I noticed on the upcoming policy committee meeting on October 2nd that we're going to be reviewing 300 and 400 policies, and we were asking for board members to make comments prior to that meeting so we can work something up and present them to the September board meeting. Am I correct in assuming that?
I think that's and I'm not sure if we've got the timing on this for the policy committees is that the committee is intending to meet early in September and then come up with its initial drafts and circulate those in September and with some earlier deadlines, and that we wouldn't actually address this until the October meeting to try and work through the wordsmithing that's been sort of, we need the input from non-committee members. We value the input, but the board meeting is sort of, especially now that we're back to Zoom, is too cumbersome of a way to really get that. So we're trying to actually have the policy adjustments addressed over a month and a half after the committee meeting meets, so we have time for offline. But thank you for addressing that. I think that's good segue for me to give a heads up to the non-policy committee members that we will be circulating editable documents of our proposed drafts to get everyone's input on that drafting well ahead of presenting it to the board. So we really appreciate your early attention to that. The idea is actually so to have the committee come up with its drafts, and I will post that as soon as possible after the committee meeting. And then we'll have a few weeks for initial input from the non-committee members. Then the committee will meet again to go over that input and sort of galvanize a sort of a finalized draft that will be resubmitted to the non-committee members for sort of final input and voting up and down at the October meeting. So that schedule makes sense? Yeah, thanks for that question, Dan. I appreciate you segueing it for me to bring it up to the rest of the board members. Thanks for teeing me up. All right, Tim, I have you, or Ted, did you want to address that as the committee chair?
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job, Graham. Yeah, just introducing yourself as the committee chair, and thanks, for the committee for putting me in that position, or allowing me to be put in that position. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, Graham, is that really our goal is to do a lot of heavy lifting on the policies that we have and clean that up dramatically, and hopefully do so primarily in committee time with a fair bit of outside of board meeting work by the rest of the board, and then really get to the point where, you know, we almost nailed this on the broadband resolution. You know, I think we got into that wordsmithing a little more than we wanted to, or was time efficient. So it's a lesson learned, and I really think that, you know, one of my goals as the chairperson of this committee will be really to try and expedite the process, but make sure we are getting what we need in the end. So that's all I've got, Graham.
Thanks, Ted. Tim, I have you next in my queue.
Okay, thank you. Two things. One is what you just described for the policy committee, the schedule, and sounds like a new process. I don't think I've seen that in any kind of email or in their folder. Maybe I missed something, but if that could be done, you know, if that could be brought forward so that we can follow that process a little better than just this verbal description here, I think that would be really helpful. So it's a request, I guess. The other thing I just wanted to say, in your report, you mentioned drafting an agreement for LPEA to temporarily assist FastTrack with accounting. And I just want to pass on that the FastTrack staff and board really appreciated the really quick response and very helpful support that they're getting from LPEA. And I just want to make sure that you're all aware that that's a real kudo, and I thank you personally as well. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Tim. Kirsten.
Yeah, question on the previous question, question and answer you have here. Is that the same as I call the question?
Yeah, no, I mean, so yes, I call the previous question is the technical term, but as I tried to capture, there's no specific formality of stating it. So I call the question, I move the previous question, I want to vote now. Any of those are sufficient motions. There's no sort of standing on ceremony for specific language. It's just, if you were going to go to your own copy of Robert's Rules of Order in the index and look it up, you'd want to look it up under previous question in the index, because that's the official title. But it's in the let's see, in the 16.6, I think it is, it's pretty clear that it says, you know, whatever, as long as you're getting your point across, it's sufficient language to do that.
Okay, cool. So yeah, next time I pull my Robert's Rule, I appreciate you telling me the clause and everything. And then just one comment overall on this is, given that it's from a lawyer, I do appreciate the clarity and the brevity of this. Everything is there that I can think of, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, and I'm hopeful that, you know, that I do get a lot of really good and interesting questions from the board, and I think a lot of questions that come individually are good for everybody. So I hope everybody appreciates being able to share your questions that you've all specifically had with other board members.
You're doing great, Dan. Graham, doing great. I mean, can't even imagine the scope of what you have to keep in your head. Okay. Are you done, Kirsten? Okay, great, thank you. Back to you, Graham.
So yeah, if anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'll just let my report speak for itself.
Okay.
Not that I'm sure everybody wouldn't love 20 minutes of attorney report.
Fair enough. Just as a quick note, Rachel blew, with no irony or cleverness, she blew a fuse and dropped off in her house. So she's trying to get her dial back in. So she's going to be offline for a couple of minutes. She just texted me. Okay.
Is that the first time that we lost broadband because of a blown fuse? I think that's pretty ironic, actually.
I mean, at every level. Like, if this group can't solve that, then we should all just, go home. But okay. So let's focus on director reports, focus on sort of highlights and questions. We'll just sort of, again, we got about 15 more minutes here before break. And why don't we start with the Roundup Foundation for highlights and questions?
Yeah, can I jump in, John?
You bet, go for it.
Yeah, so yeah, once again, I have to say thank you for to the board for putting me on this Roundup board while I was conspicuously absent. So I actually did read the minutes and discovered that it was Kirsten who motioned for me to be on this board. So thank you specifically. Yeah, just, I mean, what I got to say is it's awesome. It is a great reminder of kind of the principles that, the co-op principles, that we're not just here to, to supply power to our membership, that the good of the community is a key piece of what we're trying to do. And so it's great for me to be able to get like direct line of sight on that. So I was really excited, and I think it was maybe like 1 or 2 days after I got back from my vacation that the meeting happened, but I was committed to making that happen and attending. So it was my first time, so you'll have to excuse a little bit, the inaccuracies, but it's all there in the report. One thing that I would note, because it was of special interest to me, was that through the pandemic, I think we'd had sort of a reduction in requests to the Roundup board. And so the available money for that board to give out had grown a bit. And so there was some discussion about, we do have a little more to give. Let's not do it all at once, but let's taper it over the next few months. And so some of what was given away by Roundup Committee was a little larger than I think the standard numbers, kind of month over month. But we're trying to get back to, it's really not a great idea, I think, for us to be sitting on a large chunk of money there that really is intended to provide value to our community. So other than that, the financial reports there, please don't ask me questions on that because I'm not up to speed enough on it yet. I will be by next month. And then thanks to Joe, that was he attended, and it was his last time for now on the Roundup board. And welcome to Rachel, even though she blew a fuse, and she'll be on it next time. But Joe was kind enough to write up the summary of where the money went this month, and please feel free to read through it, and I'll try and answer questions if you have them. Otherwise, that's it for Roundup.
Great. Okay, if no further questions on Roundup, let's hand the mic to, oh, sorry, Tim, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is a Roundup question or not, but typically around this time of year, I thought we considered some sort of grant program around maybe unclaimed capital credits or something, and I'm a little lost, and I apologize if I shouldn't be, but I was a little lost on where we might be with that, and if there could be a quick update, that would really help me a little bit. Thanks.
John, I can address that briefly. I think we had a time when there was kind of special grants when people could apply for, gosh, I think it was $5,000 and maybe even more. I can't remember exactly. But the last time that was done was before COVID. It was a couple of years ago. The board discussed it, and it's kind of a really involved, tough process to go through. in my recollection, and chime in here, Kirsten, if you think I'm wrong, but the discussion I seem to remember is that instead of trying to do these special grants, evaluations, which took up an enormous amount of time by the volunteer staff members, we decided to kind of step back and just go with the monthly monthly grants. And as Ted mentioned, and we talked about at the last meeting, is can we get more people out there or more organizations requesting money and kind of flow the money through. It was I went through that once, and it wasn't an easy process, and it was just in my opinion a bit too complicated for for this board. So does that answer your question, Tim?
Sort of. Is there another grant process utilizing unclaimed capital credits that we will go through this year? And I see Graham wants to answer that, so I'll be quiet.
So policy 203 just says that the board will periodically determine how to distribute unclaimed capital credits beyond its committed allocation to $5,000 a month to Roundup and our scholarships. So if there's unclaimed capital credits left over after that, it's just periodically. So it may have happened at this time frame in the past, but there isn't anything that specifically obligates it to occur on any sort of frequency, like quarterly or at a specific time of the year. That's the best answer I can.
Okay, so I guess there's nothing pending at this point.
That's correct. And then if the Ted and the rest of the board want to change that, I guess that's up to them.
Okay, terrific. Kirsten?
Yeah, I think there is, though, a alternative energy, though, the ones for the folks who choose to give special money on their bill. I think that there's a process for that, and I don't remember if that's been delegated to staff on that one, or if, because sometimes we have done a little subcommittee quick like to review that. Jessica, can you help me out? Or
yes,
anybody?
And I think Carl.
I think Carl's on deck here to bring the clarity.
Okay.
Yeah, we have been. I can't speak for a long time frame because it's only happened twice in the short time I've been with LPEA. But we are allocating unclaimed capital credits on an annual basis. It's happening in March, the last 2 years. And as Graham rightly pointed out, there's the standard allocation to Roundup and scholarships. And then everything left over, we came forward with a proposal. And then I think there was a slight adjustment at the board meeting for where that money went. So we've been doing it annually, and I believe that system works quite well.
So that's about the allocated credits. I'm sorry, sir. I was asking about the money that members give in addition for alternative projects and how that is being disseminated.
I can sort of answer that for you, Kirsten. We've got two very similar pools of money. One is an innovative project fund that the board has the authority to fund out of unclaimed capital credits under policy 203. And then we also have, we have policy 303, which is what you're referring to, local renewable generation fund, which is the opportunity for people to do on-bill contributions. And so those would be the two policies that cover those two. They're very, very similar, but they aren't directly related. Frankly, that was something I was sort of hoping to address as part of the policy committee. We have some of these things where they sort of overlap but don't really reference each other. And so that was something I was going to have the policy committee look at, those 203 and 303 to see if there's an efficiency to be had there.
So it's the 303 money that I'm asking about. Is the 203, I think, that Tim is asking about, And I'm fine if we do this as part of policy. I don't think, and I'm hearing from Tim, he doesn't want to either have this totally drop off the radar. I'm just trying to understand that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And John, just
John
to
Lee.
provide clarity.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, we can go ahead and I just asked staff if we can provide maybe a document that describes the different funds and the policies, because I think this question comes up pretty often and it does get confusing. So maybe that would help if we went ahead and created a document for the board.
Okay. Thank you. John, you had your hand up. Did you still have a question? Nope, all good.
Hey, I think that'd be really helpful, Jessica, because how it all works for all the other board members too would be great. And even an explanation of the roundup funds and the capital credit funds that we deal with on a monthly basis, just a couple sentences, because it took me a few months to figure that out. We get into the meetings and they moved along pretty quick. So that would be a good, helpful background.
Okay, we are doing pretty darn good here on time, but we have 6 minutes left. I suspect, unless Kohler, you think you can get Tri-State done in 6 minutes, I say we can wrap this up early, and then you'll be, and then we'll pick you up after we come out of the executive session, attorney updates and all of that, unless you want to take a run at 6 minutes.
No, I'll leave it up to the questions that are going to be asked. That determines the time. I would like to mention, though, that since we're going to go into a break and then executive session comes up pretty quick, I can't find the link in to do the executive session. I don't know if it was sent out or not, or I'm just missing it. So if maybe that could get worked on while we're at lunch. It's resent out, please.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, we
okay.
can get that done, Kohler. We'll get it to you.
Okay. Okay, Joe, you got a thought here before we wrap?
Yeah, just a quick question, Kohler, the new chairman for Tri-State, the board. I saw he's from New Mexico, which seems to be a bit of a departure. Just any thoughts on that, on him? You think? Yeah,
I think it's really good. I think a change like is necessary. He's a good, strong director. Asks a lot of questions. I think he's fair with all the other directors on the board. So I look forward to Tim running it. The Rick Gordon is stepping down, has been on the board since I think it's been 1994, and he won't even be on the executive committee. So there will be some changes, although there's not a whole lot of changes of the people in there, but with Tim's leadership, and then Don Cairns as the vice chair, I look forward to it. I think there can be some positive things.
And yeah, are they kind of on board with, what Tri-State's doing, moving towards the, the next phase of energy production and stuff? Do they seem to be on board?
Joe, I'm gonna cut you off here. I want you to ask those questions, but let's ask them in the full context when he's doing his report, okay? So that we're not rushing. Okay. Great. All right. So everybody, we'll see you guys in 33 minutes. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Everybody back, or we want to give this another minute? 3, 4, 5. Great. Okay, well, let's resume. As we talked right before the end of the meeting, we are going to pick this agenda up at section 7, which is the attorney update for FERC, Adams County, and the Colorado PUC. Looks like Matt's online. So welcome, Matt, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, John. Hope you all are doing well. So yeah, quick public update on a few different fronts, both Adams County as well as on the FERC side. So taking Adams County first, Tri-State has filed a partial motion to dismiss. LPEA and United filed a response opposing that partial motion to dismiss. And that just went in on Friday. So from here, Tri-State will have a reply, and then we'll determine the scope of that case going forward. So that is the status update on where the Adams County litigation sits. On the FERC side, the settlement negotiations continue in the full and partial buyout consolidated case. So that is ongoing. I'll have more of an update on that in the executive session. We actually had a meeting earlier today to discuss a few things that we can kick around at that time. Other big piece is the stated rate settlement. So the 2% and 4% reduction has been approved by FERC. So that's good news. So that has gone now all the way through. There are a set of reserved issues that will be addressed going forward. But that settlement has now been blessed by FERC, the actual commissioner. So that one is all set. So I think that's a really positive development. Like we've talked about, that was a settlement that was really, led in part by LPEA. So I think a really good and constructive outcome there on that front. And then the last part on the FERC side is the Section 206 show cause proceeding that FERC opened against Tri-State. Tri-State had asked for that proceeding to be held in abeyance. FERC has denied that request and has given them another 15 days to respond. Previously, Tri-State had put in a response. LPEA and numerous other member cooperatives had put in replies to Tri-State's response. And now Tri-State will get another round of that, which I believe is due on September the 2nd. And then there's another 15 days for LPEA and other interested parties to reply to that. But FERC declined to hold that in abeyance. The agency said that they want to continue to move forward with that. So that show cause proceeding remains open. So I think that's really the guts of kind of what's going on at both the state and the federal level across a wide variety of cases. I can certainly take any questions from you.
Nada.
Somebody say something. I was just going to say in the Adams County thing, this is just back and forth motion jockeying. Is there? It seems kind of sort of obscure and not clear to me, perhaps to a lot of members. If there's any indication of, is this progress or just lawyers talking?
Yeah, I mean, progress and lawyers talking are usually, at odds with one another.
Sorry.
But look, it means the case is getting started, right? I mean, we sat, with really nothing happening on that front for a pretty substantial period of time. That case now is finally starting to move forward. So the judge will have to determine this motion to dismiss, make a ruling on that. And then that case would go into, a more formal process going forward. I do not have an exact timeline on that. It's obviously been moving very, very slow. I would expect it to continue to move slow. Certainly something, from a strategy perspective, we can discuss more when we convene an executive session.
Thanks.
Perfect. Ted, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, John. Matt, just simple legal term definition. FERC was asking to have the hearing held in abeyance. Can you clarify what does that actually mean?
Yeah, sure. So Tri-State was basically asking them to pause the proceeding to allow them to make some modifications to their full buyout charge without FERC rendering an opinion on whether the procedures that Tri-State had brought forward with regard to obtaining the exit charge were just and reasonable under the Federal Power Act. FERC declined to pause that proceeding, indicated that they intend to move forward. And, you know, as I think we've talked about in Tri-State's actual response to the show cause order, they made some changes to their buyout formula, and also produced numbers for different members. So, so that case now is going to go into another round where they've said, we're not going to hold this in, we're not going to pause the proceeding for you. You need to respond more directly to, you know, our requests to support why your procedures are just and reasonable, even with the changes that you've made to them. So, you know, overall, you know, a couple of thoughts on that. You know, one, I think it's a good development because it doesn't just, you know, send that proceeding out to pasture to kind of wait to see what's going to happen. And number two, I think it shows that FERC's really paying attention to this issue at the commissioner level, and that they want to continue to be engaged in this.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else before we drop into executive session? Okay, then we will, before I ask for the motion, Rachel's still having trouble. She had to dial in as an attendee. She can use her phone, but she can't use her internet right now. Drew, can you send her a full dial-in direction so that she has the ability to talk both in this section and that section?
Yes, sir. We've got her moved over, and so she's this 1815 number who's joined us now.
Terrific. Okay, good. Well, thanks, Rachel. You can hang up now, and we're going to go to the other one. So before we go to executive session, we need to go through the process. So we need a motion to go to executive session.
So moved. This is Tim.
Give me a second.
I'll second, Joe.
Thank you. All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Aye. No. No. Any abstained? No. Great. So we will go over, you guys can all hang up on Zoom, and we will join the executive session call. If you're having any trouble getting in, hit Drew, me, or Jessica. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, rock and roll. Everybody back? Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. All right. So when we last left off, we had finished the Roundup Foundations. We are on agenda item 10, section B. We had finished the Roundup Foundation director reports, and we were going we're going to pick it up with section 2 tri-state report. So Kohler, the floor is yours. Let's hear it.
Thank you. Joe, would you mind just repeating the question you asked me? Maybe he's frozen. So I'll just go ahead and give the report. There is a report in there. This was a kind of a special meeting because it had the annual meeting and membership meeting and the board meeting. So the board meeting and the committee meetings were brief. I was only able to attend my committee meeting because they were held concurrently, so I wasn't able to hit the other ones. So you can look through the documents I put in the drive, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Give you a couple highlights as far as the membership meeting. It was actually pretty quiet, a lot less than I was expecting. The one speaker that stood out to me that caught my attention was Mark Gabriel, who is the CEO of United. And John Lee can back me up and let me know if I make a mistake, but the message I got from him is that he felt we needed a strong tri-state, a successful tri-state, a financially stable tri-state, but also to give co-ops more freedom. That was kind of wrapped up in his talk. He's pretty firm on it, and he went the longest of any of the speakers. And then the main speaker to the audience was Barbara Sugg, who is the CEO of SPP, Southwest Power Pool. Very bright gal, and talked about a little bit about the Valentine's weekend weather event with Southwest Power Pool, how they're working with Tri-State, Colorado Springs, a few others to, try to move the RTO into the West more than what it is. So that was a very informative discussion that she had. She was also open for questions. Then as far as the report, when you look through it, there's one thing that wasn't mentioned in there that really caught my attention, and we might know more about this next month, and that was that they talked about the new proposals they're getting for renewables, and the price increases have been pretty high. It's a pretty big bite. I don't know if we're seeing that at LPEA or not. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Joe, you had walked up, and right as you were dropping off, Kohler had asked you to repeat your original question before we switch to executive session. Did you want to revisit that question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Kohler, does he seem to be on, the new chairman? I'm assuming he's kind of online with the changes going on at Tri-State. Just kind of wanted to get any kind of perspective from you on that.
So yeah, Joe, I did.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did sit down with him before the election and we talked. And one comment that he made is that he felt that when Tri-State was under Mike McInnes, no relationship, that Mike just didn't want to move the ball. He was perfectly satisfied with the model the way it was. And Tim is very excited about what Dwayne is doing, because Dwayne is making big changes at Tri-State. I mean, he's moved the ball there, I think, faster and further than most people thought he'd be able to. So I feel pretty confident about that. And Kirsten might throw in a few words too. I think she knew him and worked with him, and give her perspective as well, if you want to, Kirsten.
I would love to. Thank you, Kohler. Yeah, both Tim and then also the vice chair are very thoughtful and very energetic people, which is what all you can ask for really, is people to think about it and to put the work to it. So Tim is great for that. Plus he was in Pagosa Baking Company last week, so you got to give him extra credit for that.
Represent. I'll show you conflict of interest. $4 muffin.
Tim, I guess you got a question?
Yeah, a couple. One is in the June 2021 operations performance aspect of the board report, it talks about other power purchase, and they always say unspecified. It was 23% of total power supply. And I've seen this for a long time now, and it just seems, I don't know, it seems a little disingenuous to say unspecified. I mean, most of that's probably basin power. It's mostly coal power. They give kind of a sort of carbon aspect of some of the other stuff. And I guess my request would be, for the size and scope of Tri-State, it seems like they could be a little more specific about their other power purchased and the source and so forth. So I just make that a request. All right. And
so noted.
I think also down in the next page after that, which is still under June 2021 financial performance, it says purchase power was 12% greater than budget, primarily as a result of lower thermal generation, increasing the need to purchase power on the open market. And is that Tri-State's thermal generation that's lower? And I guess a little more explanation, if you have any on that, would be.
I only have a little bit, and yes, that is Tri-State's, and it's mainly maintenance and downtime as far as their thermal units.
Okay, all right. So it's summer and time to fix things up. Yes. The last thing is I observed through this report, and I've actually kind of seen this in some other context. There's probably 5 or 6 instances in this report from Dwayne and from the new CEO, and also from the not CEO, but board chair, as well as the previous one, that's gone to in response to critics, or show the critics, or all these critics, right? Without attribution, without clarity about why they're so defensive. I mean, you know, we as a board, we receive a lot of comments and input from members and people and so forth. And I don't detect us coming out and saying, well, you're just a critic and we got to show you, or, you know, be highly defensive. It's about, okay, there's a criticism. What is the nature, and what can we do about it? And I just found the tone here to be highly defensive. And was there something that caused this? Is there something I'm not aware of that is sort of saying, yeah, they were attacked unfairly or something? Is there anything in that? It comes throughout this whole report is highly defensive without clarity. So
nothing that I know that stands out. No.
Well, maybe that's a message that you could ask what's behind this, and if you've learned anything. If you're comfortable, if not, I guess I could write somebody myself. But it just seems.
Well, no, I think you bring up a good point, and I will ask about it, and get a little more detail if I can get some for you. And,
yeah, it seems like there's something behind the scenes that we're not aware of. But anyway, thanks, Kohler, for doing a good job.
If I may, for Tim, you know, I don't know that what if it's referencing, but the San Juan Citizens Alliance that had hired a guy in a van with a bulletin board to, you know, down with Tri-State and coal, needed to be met with hotel security, and then later on Westminster security when they came back another day. So, and I only know that because I had somebody make comment to me about that when they found out I was LPEA, and I was caught flat-footed. But that might be some of those avenues that, you know, came out of the left field that caused them to feel back on their heels. I know that when they went from hotel security to the Westminster police security, it was in partial response to them being on private property and that type of thing. So perhaps that's it.
Well, that might be it. I suspect that these were written before that, but that's okay.
No, actually, these are written after, because these reports are written afterwards.
Okay.
After the meetings are over, and that happened during the annual meeting. So just one real quick thing, then I'd like to turn it back over to John Lee if he has anything to talk about the annual meeting. But next month, you'll see some changes that are required by Colorado law, and that is that the Tri-State minutes will be posted on their website. Their agendas will be posted 10 days before the meeting, pretty much like what we have. The board meetings will be open to members and members. They have to sign in first. There is a comment period, just like what we have, that members and members can comment and ask questions. The press cannot. The press is allowed in there. And so it'll change things. It'll open up Tri-State a little bit more than what you see now. So with that, unless there's questions, I'll turn it over to John and Kirsten has a question.
Yeah, just quick. Are you guys still doing in person, or are you switched back to virtual?
We're still in person, and we're still scheduled for in person next month. What we did do this last year is we did a policy that once a quarter we will do virtual. Okay. Our next scheduled virtual meeting will be November, unless, of course, we get changed by the CDC or something.
So for member comments, it's go to Westminster if you want to have a member comment.
That's right. They don't take it by phone. It has to be in person. I don't know about the virtual one though. I'll find out for you on that one. I don't know. John, do you have anything you want to add to that, John Lee?
Nothing else to add. I voted as instructed to not complicate things, and on the proceedings with Tri-State, and it was very educational for me. So thank you for that opportunity. Kirsten, really appreciate that.
So one last thing I'll do, just kind of for fun, but Tri-State at the annual meeting, they brought in all of their Teslas that they loaned out so that anybody that wanted to could test drive it. Well, what Tesla did, the company Tesla, they brought in one of their higher models to display there at the time. And it was pretty funny because one of the guys says, watch this, and he had a remote and he pushed the button and the car started dancing. The back doors were those, I don't know what you call them, big gate things, or double hinged. They started going to music, the windows went down, the lights started blinking, the front doors went open and closed, the mirrors. It's quite a thing to see, and makes you wonder about the future. So anyway, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kohler. Okay. Next up, FastTrack. Definitely, FastTrack is the star of this board meeting. So who is going to go to the FastTrack? Ted or Tim?
Well, I'm the LPEA representative, so I'm the one that wrote that report, and I think it sort of stands on its own. But I would point out that FastTrack and the town of Ignacio did reapply. I mentioned that in the report for broadband office funding for a fiber to the home, fiber to the premise network in the Ignacio area. It didn't get funded last time. There was a kind of a shortfall. Maybe I should say there were a lot of grant requests for a small amount of money, and they felt that our FastTrack's proof of need, in other words, slow speeds to not enough locations, wasn't sufficient, which ends up being an issue for a lot of these kind of grant requests. Is how do you determine whether the federal and state maps, which rely on purely census data, and if there's one connection in that census block that meets the standard, they kind of count it for all of them. And so the ability to get some good data around what real connections are versus what a provider might claim to be there can be very daunting. And so they redid that, got some more data, and resubmitted it. And at the moment, while there is something like 35 million of the American Rescue Plan funds that were earmarked for the Colorado Broadband Office, there's some trigger at the federal level that hasn't happened to actually release those to the state for that use. So at the moment, the pool is 6 million and there's requests of 52. If that 35 gets put in there, there's, that increases the chance that this will be funded. It would be a really, I think, showcase piece for FastTrack. Be the first time they've done fiber to the home versus fiber to a business. And it would be in an area that we could really, I think, both FastTrack and to some degree LPEA demonstrate meeting a real need in a rural area. I think that's a good thing. So, I would just say that there's the turnover of Natambu who left and has caused a bit of sort of resource shuffling, and a new fellow by the name of Drew Redmond is the new director of, and I might have it wrong, I think I put director of technology and operations. I'm not sure that's exactly correct, But whereas Natumbu had 2 roles before where he managed sort of the engineering, and he was also director of operations, that's been split into 2 kind of posts, and kind of a testament to how much work and productivity he brought to the table. But otherwise, things are going well, and there's a, I would say, a very strong demand for FastTrack services at the moment. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Go ahead, Kohler.
Yeah, Tim, just real quick on the financials under revenue, it has CABS. Could you remind me what CABS stands for, the CABS?
Oh, man, I'm not sure I can remember what that is. Ted, do you?
I didn't stump Tim, did I? Okay. All right, thank you.
I will get that back to you, though. I think it's an old technology that still sort of remains within the service area, but it's kind of diminishing. But I'll get that for you, Kohler, and I'll answer you and the rest of the board with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thanks, Tim. That was awesome. Oh, nope. I got to, sorry. Back to you, Sue.
Actually, I thought you were moving on, so I wanted to make my comment before you adjourned. I'll wait until you're ready.
Okay, we have 2 more director reports, and then let's come back. I know you had an item you wanted to touch on with the board. So next up, CREA. And
okay, great. Thank you. CREA did not have a July meeting, so there's not a write-up in the board packet. However, Monday, we did have, before the cow, we did have a short budget and finance committee meeting. I was not going to try to write that up and send it to you beforehand. It was just they're having some increases in their health benefits. Tomorrow, I will be up in Granby for a strategy session and a recap of how last year went for CREA. So that will be very interesting, I am sure. And then the killdozer thing, which I don't know if you guys remember, but about 2 decades ago, the guy who fully armored the bulldozer and took Granby out. Yeah, they have a presentation on that tomorrow evening, which I think will be fascinating. And let's see, on Friday, we have a regular board meeting. So look forward to that scintillating reading next month. Anybody have any comments or questions for me? Great, thank you. Appreciate you all.
Okay, thank you. All right, Western United.
Yeah, so no meeting in July. We've got a meeting tomorrow. It'll be my first. I have gotten permission to crash in on the audit committee meeting, which happens before the board meeting. So I'll get started an hour earlier than expected. And then the fish fries tomorrow. I don't know what that means other than I think fish will be fried. So if anybody wants to make it up there by tomorrow, well, I can get you in for some cheap fish.
The fish fry is to die for.
Oh, good.
It's good.
Really? That's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, well, thank you for that. And thanks for taking the time to, destroy your cholesterol scores at the fish fry on behalf of the membership. So that's it. We had for everything. Sue, you had one open question you wanted to double back on. We're getting towards the end of here, but go ahead.
I do. Thank you. And of course, it's that time of day when I get croaky. This was one of the questions I had put on the director point before it got updated. And then when Kirsten brought it up earlier today, it dawned on me again. And then Hillary kind of answered my question. It had to do with the survey. And thank you, Hillary, for sending out that email. I still have one question on it, but your email certainly addresses my concern with only 400 members. But in your explanation, it talks about that the online survey is a little different because it's a self-selected sampling. But when I go into our website, I'm not seeing where members can actually complete that survey. Can you address that a little bit for us, please?
Yes, so what it meant by the online survey being different is that unlike the phone surveys, which were able to have the demographic data of the people who are taking them and contact them because they match the demographic data that we need, the online goes out to a bigger group and we just hope to get back a bigger amount. So that's what I meant by that. Did that answer your question on that?
Not totally. You know, I thought that it was the survey itself was going to be on our website too, so that any member could.
No.
And
no, and I can get details from NRECA on how they do that sample. But basically how it works is we pull a 100% list of all of our residential members with all their contact details and data. We send that to NRECA and they have a sampling tool that allows them to collect what is statistically referred to as a representative sample from that, 32,000, 35,000 residential member list. I can ask Jane, who's the person who's facilitating the survey for us. I can, if you have any more specific questions on that, you could send them to me and I can send them directly to her and get a better response for you than I can probably give.
Okay, I'll probably do that just because if somebody gets an email, it might look like spam to them, so they may never even open it. So I guess that would be one of my other concerns.
Yeah, and I believe what they're doing is that they pick this random sample that they want to start with. Everyone gets a postcard, and the postcard says you have an option. You can either go on now, and here's the URL, and take the survey, or if you would like to do this via phone, here's a number that you can call. So I believe that they do have that option.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, John, you have your hand up.
I just, for the county fairs, the reports aren't back in, the sales stuff isn't back in all the way, so I was going to have my report for September, but I got an email asking about it. And so a couple of notes. August 7th in Archuleta County, we bought one animal, and I know this is really low speed, but there's the sheep and the little boy over there at the Archuleta County Fair, and he did a great job with his sheep, and it was very good to be able to talk with them. Archuleta County, the fair board came up and was excited to see LPEA there, and with last year being so different. Did the same thing the next weekend, the next Saturday at the La Plata County Fair, bought a couple of animals. Hillary and her team had a great presence for us there in the exposition hall, and I think you must have seen thousands of people through there. And I was standing in the back one time when somebody was asking probably such a specific question to one of Hillary's folks, and they were getting the answer. So it seemed like it was staffed very well, as for good exposure for us. I can write this up and include the couple of photos with the final, since it's not back into the office yet, with some of the thank you cards like Kristen and I did last year from the fair, if that's what I need to do for September.
Terrific. Thank you, John. All right, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know if I may have missed this, but Jessica, so are people going to the office again? And I'm assuming we're on kind of Zoom indefinitely then, right?
So yeah, Joe, we've been back in the office for a while, as we reported early on in the summer, but unfortunately with the Delta virus increasing and the guidance from San Juan Basin Health and talking to John, we decided it would be best to go Zoom because we cannot guarantee the social distancing if we include the public in these board meetings. And so it was their recommendation that we hold these in Zoom.
So, but staff is continuing to go to the office. I guess that was my question.
Staff has been in the office since, I believe, July or August, yes. And we're still on that permanent work schedule where there's flexible work schedules. So some days they work from home and some days they're in the office.
So,
okay, so the Delta.
Joe, you end up, so I don't know if you saw in the newspaper the other day, the school board had to cancel a meeting. You created, because we have to admit the public, you create a deadlock situation. If somebody comes in and refuses to comply, they create an unsafe situation for somebody else, and we have no control over the situation. With an employee, you have more control. So
okay.
That's really, that's the essential difference. Is, I mean, if we had a stadium to hold the meeting, okay, you could probably pull it off, but I mean, you've all, we just don't have the space. If 20 people walked in and 3 people went, yeah, well, I have a different view of COVID, then we would just be in a, we would be in a position, a lose-lose.
Yeah, I understand that.
Thinking.
I was just wondering, with employees with the Delta variant, are there any extra precautions going on? Are you testing, anything like that?
Yeah, so we are working with our safety coordinator, and he's in constant communication with San Juan Basin Health and Graham, actually. And so we're monitoring the situation. We're going to do what we need to do, which is necessary. Right now, we're monitoring the situation. If we need to bring in testing, we will. If we need to bring back masks, we will, but they're not recommended. They're highly recommended from San Juan Basin Health, but it's not an order. So we'll be watching and working with our safety director on that issue.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Joe. Sue?
That brought up another thought in my mind. Thank you, Joe. Do you think, and I know it's hard to know with COVID, but what are we thinking about the member appreciation lunches in September? Do we have any insight on that?
Also a really good question, because we've been thinking and talking about that. So again, our safety coordinator is in communication with San Juan Basin Health just this week, Sue, to ask them their opinion. Fortunately, these events are considered outdoors because they are, while they're in the truck barns, all the doors are open. But we are confirming with San Juan Basin Health, and if they say you guys should shut that down, we're going to shut it down.
Great. Thank you. Kirsten?
Yeah, have we given any thought to requiring vaccinations or tests?
So that's a huge discussion item amongst my fellow CEOs, and co-ops are thinking about it, but none of them are going to do it as of right now. United Power may do that. It is not a requirement, and I am not open and willing to do that right now. We are probably, Carl, please help me here, about 70%, over 70% of our employees are probably vaccinated. There's probably another 10 to 15% that have already contracted COVID. And so there's a small percentage of our employees that are still susceptible to this. And so we have told them that their options are to wear a mask or they can go get vaccinated. But to require vaccinations is a whole nother set of complications with employment law. And if we did require them, then many of our linemen would probably quit. And that would impact the safety and the reliability of the grid. I'm not willing to go to that effect right now, especially because so many of our folks are vaccinated or they've already built up the immune because of the COVID.
Okay. No easy answers here. All right. We are 4 minutes away from finishing early. My one wish for this meeting. So absent any other last minute comments or editorial, here, do I need a motion? I can just do it, right?
If it's according to the agenda, you can just adjourn. It's if you're adjourning outside of the scheduled agenda that you need a motion.
Excellent. Well, I am hereby adjourning this meeting. So thank you very much for your time, and the remaining 3 minutes of the day are yours.
Well,
yep. Appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you, and we'll see you guys online.
Bye. Everybody be safe.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you.